Welcome everybody here. We're here live under the mats radio. This is your host Tech. I got my man Exo Skeleton, my editor. We're here live, special episode tonight, January the 11th, 2022. We have with us the man himself, Victor. Apocalypse. Victor, hashtag the Space Lord. Victor with a K, formerly a part of the Ascension, currently a part of the Awakening with his tag partner who's not with us physically, Connor. We gotta give him a shout out because he's big as shit. We don't want him to beat our ass. So, and
True,
shout out
true.
to Victor's dog. Don't know
Yeah,
his name,
Chester.
Chester,
Yeah.
right now. So we're here live, guys. We're here the first interview for the new year. You actually get to see Axel's face, which is rare. Me and Victor, being bad influences, took a shot. I took a shot of Jack Daniels, Gentleman Jack. Exo straight edge. She took a shot of water. And Victor, what did you take a
I
shot
did.
of?
I did Tito's. I wish Tito's would sponsor me. That'd be great. I would love a sponsorship in life by Tito's. It would save me a lot of
Love Tito's, man. My fiance love Tito's. I've been by Tito's, the actual headquarters in Texas.
money. Oh, nice.
Definitely so. So we're gonna start things off. Exo, you good, man? Here in Baltimore, Maryland. We're gonna start things off under the map radio. Victor, formerly from the Ascension, currently with the Awakening. You're here now. You got your dog laid up beside you. You got the plushies. You got Teen Titans. You
Yeah,
got Batman in the back.
I
Action
do, and I got the
Awesome.
Necronomicon pillow. I got a Necronomicon pillow
Yep,
right there.
Necronomicon pillow.
Yeah, I knew I wasn't going crazy. I'm looking like, is that the Necronomicon? What the hell is he doing with
Sure is.
that?
Yeah,
It's a pillow.
yeah.
My
I got
lady B, just her eyes just grew up like, why the fuck does he have that?
I got it from I can't remember. It might be called Creepy Co. But they have that was one of the things they had with this super awesome blanket that's of Evil Dead, and it's like the original like
Oh,
VHS cover,
Right.
and it is literally like the most comfortable blanket I've ever had in my life, like out of any throw blanket, and it's just like the Evil Dead VHS cover, so like you can't beat it. It's just
nice.
the coolest. So I got that and the pillow with that a while ago. So I love
Saying
them.
that.
Yeah,
Nice. Very nice.
Now,
yeah,
Victor, welcome to Under the Mat Radio. Here, we're both from the East Coast, but you from Canada, man.
I
Canada,
am.
our
Yes,
neighbor.
but
We Americans.
yeah, well, I'm American too, and now I live on the East Coast in America, and I don't ever really plan on going back to Canada,
Okay.
especially at this time of year. It's way too cold. It is way too cold. Like
Word.
whenever I would go back for Christmas time and stuff, like instantly -40, it would hit. And so at least like I haven't been back for the last couple of years because of COVID and everything like that. But it doesn't disappoint. It's -40 at Christmas time every year, and I'm just like, I don't miss that at all. I this year I was hanging out by my pool with my in-laws, and they were swimming. And I was like, it's too cold for me to swim, but like, hey, glad you guys enjoy it because they're from up north in Maine as well. So,
Okay. Now, with you being a Canadian, where exactly are you from when it comes to Canada?
I mean, I was born in Edmonton, but I only really lived there for about 5 or 6 years. And my parents moved me up north to a little town called Grand Prairie, Alberta, where I pretty much all grew up. And it was just like a small town. Like I think when I moved there was only about 30,000 people, and I grew up there. And like it's kind of funny because that's where my whole love of wrestling began. Like when I first moved there, um, man, I was probably only like 5 or 6 years old, and my neighbors were like all into wrestling, and they were kind of the first ones to expose me to it because I used to get everything on VHS like the day it would come out, and they kind of showed me Stampede wrestling and stuff like that, and so I became a wrestling fan. Like it was even funny because I know like I was only like 5 or 6 years old, maybe seven at the most. And even one of the guys that my dad worked with, he was a big wrestling fan. He loved Stampede wrestling. So he took me to my first show, like when I was that young already. And I can remember at that show, I saw guys like Chris Benoit. Like I had Benoit's autograph on a picture that I've never been able to find. That is somewhere in my mother's house still to this day. I know it is. But it was of Jason the Terrible. It was kind of he was famous back then. Like Carl Moffat was his name. He worked between Stampede and Japan a lot back then. And I remember I met Davey Boy at one of the first couple shows I'd ever been to. And I got into wrestling at a real young age, thankfully. I was just, I guess, that close enough to Calgary to start it off. I guess it was kind of destiny. It's funny how it happens. I hadn't thought about that in a long time, but it was like, yeah, when I first moved from Edmonton to Grand Prairie, I was immediately exposed to wrestling, and I was a real young kid.
I was in that. Now, you being in Canada with Stampede, what attracted you to wrestling? Was seeing it in Stampede, with Steve Hart. I know you have a background with the Dungeon. What about wrestling attracted you as a kid, as a young Victor?
It's funny now that I think about it, because like what I first saw was WWF. That was like the very first thing, and then I remember like I just caught like Stampede on TV one day, and I was like, well, this isn't WWF, this is wrestling. And I was like, I really like it. And then when I saw it live, man, I was so captivated. I remember like I saw Muckin Singh, who was later Bastion Booger in WWF. Like he was at the show that I was at when I was a kid, and just seeing these larger than life characters come out and the way they were, there was something about it. Like I just loved it immediately. Like when I saw, especially when you actually see an arena full of people reacting to it, like it's just kind of, I don't know, it was contagious. I guess I knew that's where I needed to be at the time, or at least where I was going to wind up. Like I fell in love with it. Like it was too funny because I used to wrestle with the neighbors' kids in their front yard, and wrestling was kind of always around with most of me and the kids in the neighborhood. And then I remember to this very day, like two of my best friends, like one of them I met in grade 2, and we were both into wrestling. I can remember hearing him and another kid one day on the playground talking about Owen Hart being the Blue Blazer, and I was just like, "What? Like, how? Like, I was literally, this was grade 2. Like, how does anybody know this at that point in time, right?
Right.
But like, that's my buddies knew it somehow, and they had figured it out already. And like me and my buddy, like we clicked instantly, and it was all due to wrestling, more or less. And then even when I got to high school, I'd kind of like fallen off of wrestling for a little while, and then one of my best friends I ended up meeting in high school was like one day he's like, "Hey, do you know what ECW is?" And I was like, "No," and this was like the right as kind of ECW had changed over
Right.
type of thing back in like '96, like
Yeah.
'97. I don't even think it was as late as '97.
Right.
And I was like, "No," and he showed me like Sabu and RVD as and all those guys, and I was like so back into wrestling that that it's funny how it all happens, because it just kept going. Wrestling has been there with me my whole life, and it's kept calling me pretty much.
I understand. I know for me and Exo being born and raised here in Baltimore, which is one of the top 3 wrestling cities in history.
Yeah.
We didn't get. I know I didn't, because people that got ECW was satellite, so I had cable. I don't know about Exo.
Yeah.
So back in school, the late 90s, middle school, high school, for me, people like ECW, that's the real wrestling. I'm like, what the hell are you talking about? And I see Taz and Bubba Ray flaming tables and shit, and thumbtacks, and I'm friends with a lot of guys, Sabu and Angel, and all them guys like this Tico Scorpio, and what then I was like, man, that's the real wrestling. WWF, WCW's fake. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And the first tape, back in the day, we used to tape trade. I get VHS, and I'm like,
Yep. That was how we got it.
That's a tape
My
trade
tape
too.
trade with some guys.
right, like flaming tables. What the hell? Like they in Philly,
Oh
and
yeah.
people just like, motherfuck you, motherfucker. Like, you ain't see that on TNT USA.
No.
So
Like I'll never forget the first time I watched Sabu and Terry Funk in a barbed wire match. I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, oh my God. Like, and then, not even, man, not even 5 years later, I was meeting and then working with Sabu. So,
yeah,
but, at the time, of course, unfortunately, he had a torn bicep. So we definitely weren't doing any barbed wire ring matches.
yeah,
Or he had just come back from surgery, and he had just had his like bicep reattached or something. So, and we were working at a or was it the Saskatoon Fair, something like that, in Saskatoon, Saskatchewan. So, pretty unreal.
Sabu, I say is back around that day, he didn't talk. Our good old buddy Fonzie, Bill Alfonso would talk for him, and um, a regional wrestler, good close friend of ours, had passed, and he actually wrestled his last match against Sabu. All Sabu said was "Hi, I'm Bob." Didn't talk much, and people don't know Sabu was cool as shit, and his late wife Melissa, me and her was good personal friends. My mom, I took care of my mom. When she passed, we text each other, and I would talk to Sabu at conventions. Sabu's hilarious, but he kept,
I love Sabu.
yeah, I love Sabu, and he he kept kayfabe. Around that time, kayfabe was kind of dying, the internet was starting, but no one ever heard Sabu talk. You heard him grunt, moan, he get cut and shit to him by said barbed wire. You didn't hear him talk. So it's like, wait, he's real, like he's a human, So Sabu's
When
good.
I actually got to know him, it was really weird because I was still such like a fan of his, and I was so new. And they brought him into Stampede um, to do a couple like shows with us and to do like a few tours because we used to actually do tours with Stampede when I started. That all did pretty good. Like it's crazy when I look back at it now because thinking like, man, I remember doing these shows in Saskatchewan and all these hockey arenas, and they were pretty full, and it was really cool. And like especially like one night I can remember, there was a few of us hanging out in the room. It was like me and I think it was Wavell Star and a guy named Greg Pollock, and they were two guys who had already kind of been around for a little bit, at least within the Canadian scene at that time. And even Wavell eventually went to OVW as Standing Thunder for a little while. But we were kind of horsing around in the room, and it was late at night after the show, and all of a sudden we just hear like a knock on the door. We're like, what the fuck? Who's at the door? Who would be at our hotel room? Like, what the hell? Looks out, I think one of the guys looks out the people and he goes, oh my fuck, it's Sabu. What the fuck does Sabu want right now? So he opens,
shit.
we're like, oh, open the door, it's Sabu. And he's like, what the fuck are you guys doing? It's like one of the first times I'd ever even heard him talk, pretty much. And it was just he had heard some banging on something, and he's like, "Are you guys fighting over here? I thought there was a fight going on." Like, no, we're just fucking. It was funny. I wound up doing a few, like when I was doing that Saskatchewan fair stuff. Like we were out there all week, and it was like Sabu and Jerry Land and Don Callis, like three names, that we all know now very well. And I got to hang out with those guys a lot. And as a young guy, like they really helped me a lot and taught me a lot in the business. All three very different minds that were all within um, such awesome like spectrums of the wrestling universe, and have obviously like all kept going like in different fashions. So like it's funny now whenever I watch Don on TV or whatever, like I can't help but laugh like all the time because like that's pretty much for him. Like
Yeah.
I know him a little, differently, but and it's been so long, so
And
it's crazy to see now that I think about it. I haven't thought about that stuff in a long time, really.
right, and if for for younger viewers, they may not realize it. Cyrus, what's to say, Don Callis, for the
Yeah,
younger viewers, is the actual manager of Kenny Omega. Was the manager of Kenny Omega?
yeah,
For older viewers like us, we remember him as Cyrus in ECW. He was the
yeah,
Jack in WWF
Hate that guy.
yeah.
with the
Oh
Truth
yeah,
Commission. Kurgan had that
yeah.
big ass neck that was like,
Well,
boom.
and he actually he worked in Japan even before that, and I can't
Right.
remember if he just worked as Don Callis or not, but he'd been around for a while. Because even like when I said I worked those shows, I used to work with them actually a lot when we did those um, Saskatoon Fair shows. It was like me and Jerry Lynn against him and Wavell Star a
Wow.
lot of the time on those shows, and they would like this is a funny thing about wrestling, and this is where Don super excels was they would want so much time, but there was only so much talent for these fair shows. And Don would be like, "Well, we got to kill half an hour to 45 minutes because a couple of the other guys went short. So I'm gonna go talk for about half an hour, maybe a little longer." and I'll get them real pissed. And then you guys can come out. We're like, that sounds great. But it always worked. Like it always worked.
Like that sounds like fun.
I mean, like it's one of those things. Like when you're working fair shows in the middle of the day, where maybe there's not that many people out there. You know what I mean? Don would still manage to get them like so riled up that he would attract a crowd, and it always worked. So it was awesome for that. Like, and it was pretty wicked to see somebody be able to do that because I was only, a couple of years even into my career at the time. Like, I think that was back in, I guess I was about 5 years into my career at that time. It was about 2005.
When
it
did
was cool.
when did you feel? And it's funny because some people may listen and be thinking 5 years you should know what you're doing. Some professions it take a while. You still will be considered green. So when did you feel, Victor, that you felt like you got it? You said 5 years, you still learning. When did you kind of feel like, all right, I got a hold of this, like the psychology, the movements, how to go in the ring? When did you feel like, all right, I'm not green like baby's poop, but I kind of got a hold of this and kind of understand.
I mean, it's weird because I think there's different stages. Like now that you bring it up, because like even so, by the time I was working those shows at the fair, I'd already done a tour of New Japan, and so when I went to New Japan, I was only about 3 years in, 4 years into my career, and I knew I didn't know anything. But I kind of knew what worked on that tour that I did, and I got a lot of advice from awesome people, and so I kind of kept rolling with that. But I always knew I didn't really know anything. But then even thinking about it, like there was a guy that I had did an interview with, I don't know, probably last year, who did the interview with me before I had started with WWE, but he had been on the shows with us. He'd been kind of like documenting it that week that we were out there. And I remember him saying, because he was taking photographs around the ring and stuff like that. He's like, "Man, you're a real ring general, like in there, and like you always kind of get good matches out of people and stuff like that." And I never really like had thought about it that way. I was just always trying to work and do just what I had been trained to do, more or less, and just have an awesome match with no matter who it was. Like it's all it kind of was. And so at that point, I was thinking like, do I? Is this weird? It's like I don't always feel like I know what I'm doing. You know what I mean? But like, and that was, man, that was back in like I said, that was about 2005, 2006. But so then I got to OVW in 2007, and it was like a complete reset, where I was like, I don't know anything. Like that was one of the first times I'd ever said, um, if I don't know what I'm going to do if I don't make it in wrestling, and I'd never thought about like not making it in wrestling at that point in time, and that was already like 7 years into my career, and I'd never thought about like just not, I don't know, making any money at it, and really I wasn't making any money at it for all that time. Um, and then still like when I got signed by WWE, which was at the end of 2010, I think 2009 or 2010, something like that. And like showing up in FCW, like I'd already had a tryout in FCW. I knew some of the coaches and I knew a bunch of the people there, but still showing up was like a whole new reset on like anything um, that I knew. Because even when I left OVW, I felt like I was like bang on. Like even if I was watching wrestling on TV, I kind of like I had such a clear vision of what was going to happen just because I could feel it so well. And by the time I got to FCW, it was like a complete reset again. And it was different stages of doing things like all the time. Like wrestling's kind of always like that. At least it's been like that for me. Because it was kind of a struggle at first in FCW. And then I was really lucky, honestly, because all the coaches there kind of knew I was better than, I guess, what I was probably producing at the time. I'd want to say because there was a lot of times like there was a bunch of us we'd go out and we'd be like so gung ho for a match, and then we'd come back and be like, "What the fuck just happened?" Like, oh, like it happened with Adam Rose and like Tama Tonga and like Juice. like a bunch of times where we'd all be working in different tag matches or whatever, and we'd be like so amped up and ready for the match, and then we'd have the match and it just sucked and we'd get yelled at. And, shit like that would always happen, but everybody was kind of, you go through those different resets when you get somewhere sometimes. I've seen it happen with a lot of people. And even by the time we went up to the main roster, we kind of had our flow and thought we knew what we were doing, and we would do what we were doing, and then we'd slowly get told like, don't do that, no, don't do that, no, don't do that. And so it's like, do I know what I'm doing? Do I not know what I'm doing? Like,
Right.
You always got to believe in yourself. I think it's harder, like, especially once you get within the corporate setting of it all, because with WWE too, and I'm not saying this in a negative way, at least I'm trying not to, but you're told no a lot of the times, depending on where you are on the card and certain things. And I remember, like, I used to have a lot of fun with agents like Scott Armstrong, because when we'd be doing like main event matches or superstars or whatever, he'd be like, all right, well, none of this, none of this, none of this. And that would be like when Apollo Crews was just first coming in. I'd be like, well, how do you want me to showcase everything awesome this guy does if we're not allowed to do any of it?
Right.
And so I would just say, well, how about I'll just, go do this instead. And it would just, I'd always do something to try to like push the limits of it. But, we always knew we were going to have a good match with each other at least. So it was always fun. So, sometimes it doesn't matter, these things like being, having your stipulations put on you or whatever else. Because like if you're, I guess like that's to finally answer that question. Like I know that I'm more than capable of doing anything I need to do in the ring, because even when you got the handcuffs on, you'll still get the job done.
Right.
And I'm going to look as good as I can doing it, or hopefully having both of us look as good, or all of us look as good as possible in the process. So.
Yeah. And what you're saying, and we'll get more deep into that later on in the interview, is the challenges that you yourself, and you learn this in the business of adapting, of Stampede, the FCW, the NXT, to the main card and the corporate. Don't do this, don't do that, do this, do that. Camera angles, where to lie. So it's a bunch of, I know I'm doing okay, but now you telling me to restructure. So it does show the greatness that you have, that you're able to adapt, because we all heard stories of where a lot of the boys and girls sometimes they get stuck in that one routine, from indie habits or this, that, and the other, where they don't adapt. But seems like you adapted pretty well, or at least you was able to learn in a good amount of time to where you was able to go from the level of Stampede, FCW, developmental, NXT to the main roster. So definitely a kudos to you.
Yeah. I got really lucky. Like, Stampede had a plethora of like people that came through when I first started there. Um, and so I got to learn a lot in there. Like just even like starting with Bruce Hart, on a Ross Hart, on a Stu Hart, like the little bit that he could come down and do stuff. We had guys like Phil LaFawn come through. Um, and then I met a trainer named Tokyo Joe, who's like a scout and trainer for New Japan for like ever. And he really opened up like a lot more wrestling to us that he took in just what he showed us, and like helping us get to Japan, helping us get to England. Like, and two, getting to England was, a whole new ball game, because
Right.
anything, like all the terms for everything is completely different. It's a whole new lingo.
Wow.
And so it was, you got to be adaptable, you know what I mean? And that's really what wrestling is. Like it is adapting and knowing that, anybody will say this in the business, like you can do something in one town and, blow the roof off the place. And you can go half an hour down the road and still sell out a building. And they don't give a shit about any of that stuff that blew the roof off of the place, the night before. And they won't even be the same people that were at the show. So, wrestling's always changing. Like it's a really fun business that way, because like, I feel like I'm still surprised nowadays. Like even when we do shows, some of the stuff, or like even just the reaction we get coming out, sometimes I'm surprised, because I'm just, you get kind of like, I mean, WWE was so funny because some nights we'd get no reaction, some nights we'd get a reaction. Sometimes we had to work to get our reaction, very hard. And so now when, if I just show up somewhere and I get a reaction, I'm really surprised at that.
I understand it.
But
XO.
that's, the fun of wrestling.
Yes.
So you go it.
So I'm gonna be very, very transparent for a minute here because I do recall seeing when I seen the Ascension for the first time and I seen y'all come out, I'm looking like, holy shit, who's these guys? And I'm like, please fucking use them right.
Yep.
And it didn't happen. And that was incredibly bad because like y'all, to me, y'all just embodied like this badass team that supposed to have the fucking belts and hard to get from. I looked at y'all as like the current generation's on Road Warriors, but with like a dark side to it. And the simple fact that those characters that was created wasn't used correctly. Because every time I would see, I'm like, all right, I feel like they could do this. It's still fair in the tag team division. Take the belt and just make it incredibly difficult for anybody to get it. Because y'all gave off that whole persona and the way y'all was in the ring. Everything was just like, yeah. And it didn't happen. And I'm like, you know what? I kind of hate y'all right about now, WWE. Fuck y'all. Fuck y'all. Point blank. Like, this is horrible.
Yeah, I mean, we heard that a lot. We still hear that a lot. And like, that's one that I don't have like a real answer for it because it was just one of those things where it took so long for Vince to see something that he was like, I get it now. Like, it was literally what Hunter told us that he said one day, like after one of the takeover pay-per-views. He went, oh, I get it. I like it. Let's bring him up. Like it's supposedly just like how it happened. We were like, oh shit, no way. It's not really going to happen.
Jesus.
And, even in the meeting that we had where we got told we were getting brought up, I was like, this ain't really going to, like, we're probably going to get fired right now instead. But then, like, we got told, no, you're coming up, like, and it's going to happen at, like, this time and stuff. And then I was like, man, this is all unreal. Like, we'd already been in developmental for so long. We'd gone through a lot behind the scenes that most people, like, don't know about. Like, during our whole NXT run, like, it wasn't a squash match behind the scenes. Let me put it that way. It was more of a squash match on us most of the time. And there's a lot of fighting, especially out of me. I was much more vigorous in my fighting back then. But so by the time it happened, I was like, I really can't believe this is going to happen. And then we got shown the pictures of what we were supposed to look like, and I knew it was dumb as fuck.
Oh God.
And like I was trying to be like, oh, this might be kind of cool. But I really think it looks stupid. And like I always look at it this way, like so I took the picture home. I lived with Tyler Breeze and Xavier Woods at the time, and me and Breeze always like had the complete opposite opinion of like things, like like not everything, but like movies, like what we thought was cool, what like music, stuff like that. We were always at opposite ends of the spectrum. He's like, oh, what happened in the meeting today? And I was like, oh well, this is what happened. We got told, this. And he's like, oh no way. And I'm like, yeah, dude. But guess what? Like, here's what we're gonna look like. And I showed him the picture, and he's like, oh no way, that's awesome. And I was like,
Oh, Jesus Christ,
that was
this is
just
not
like,
good.
yeah, that was my first reaction to it.
But see, that's one of those things. Like when y'all was in NXT, y'all killed shit. I'm like, I fuck with these guys. Like, and then when y'all got called up to the main roster, I was like, no, why y'all going to just destroy them like this?
Well,
like,
I mean, they just, and we weren't
great.
the first ones, and we weren't the last ones. You know what I mean? But they did exactly that too. It's just weird, and it's still weird to me because, like, I look at it. Like, so we watched Randy Orton grow up into the Legend Killer on TV, right? Like on WWE, and same with like Cena. Like Cena
Right.
went from being the prototype to
Right.
which he came out of developmental with, to then grow up into the John Cena we have nowadays on TV. Well, NXT let us all evolve. You know what I mean? From that like fresh face
Right.
beginning to what we were becoming as superstars. But then they did with so many of that generation was they all of a sudden had to recreate you. You know what I mean? Or it was just kind of like you were handed over to a new regime or something. Where even if, and I'll say this because the writers take a lot of shit from fans and stuff in WWE, and it's not half as much shit as they probably take from the boss. Because when I would talk to those guys, a lot of them knew us. They got us, and they go to bat for as much as they can. But most of their stuff gets thrown in the garbage a lot of the times. Like
Mhm.
even just recently, when I heard Dave Kapoor was released, I said that's insane. Because from
That's
the the first day I met him, he was nothing but supportive and helpful to every talent that I ever saw him work with. Um, and that man had a wealth of knowledge, for especially for WWE and the way things uh, are good. Like when things are good, he was usually one of the people behind them. And so, like, just when everything's kind of like thrown out all the time because somebody else doesn't like it, then I mean, you get what you get. And nowadays, I don't hear a lot from people that I used to be, talk to a lot about there. And if I do, I definitely don't talk to them about work. So it just kind of is what it is. Like the writers, believe me, they're trying for all the fans because most of the writers, even if they don't come from wrestling backgrounds or want to be in wrestling, they usually get it for the most part. And it's not them. It's not their fault.
Now with that, with all of the releases, I know I remember we were on live. We was live on air when we got the news of you guys getting released. You and Connor. Since,
shit.
since then,
Yeah,
yeah, you know it.
yeah. Well, that was even before COVID because we were the
Right.
last, I think, releases before COVID ever happened. So that was us and Sin Cara and Brodie Lee all the same day.
And you mentioned Brodie. I know. Fortunately, we just got through
Cause I,
a year of losing Brodie Lee. I remember I was we was at my family. We was at a friend's house
Hmm.
karaoke and all, and I got the text, and I just was like, "What the hell? Like, you serious?" And
when
yeah,
we had just came from the supermarket. We was outside waiting for our ride, and my lady just showed me the phone. She was like, "What the fuck? We just seen him." I'm like, "No, are you fucking kidding me?" Ah, so heartbroken.
you know how it
Uh,
is for us. If I know I'm talking about this, if my phone rings off the hook with certain people, it's either a bad. It's not to pretend somebody died or something big news like somebody debuted or what have you. And at the time, it was like, okay, this is kind of at night. What the hell was going on? I'm getting text messages, and I heard it. My heart just dropped. I was like, no, like what the hell? So I say all that to say, with Brodie, I know he was amazing. I've I've seen Brodie and Eric walk past us in New Orleans. Like I'm here, he walked past us, said hi.
Yeah.
Um, all the guys we've known over the years, nothing but great things to say about Brodie. We did see a funny clip of Brodie on your Twitter of him putting up his middle finger and him
Yeah.
working
That
out.
was. I think
So
that was one of the last times I actually saw him. So,
yeah, so you
but
don't
yeah,
mind, you know, give us a memory or two of Brodie Lee, which is definitely so beloved in the
I
wrestling.
mean, I should probably start shit talking him at this point. Everybody says so many nice things about him, and I used to spend many hours a day with him because we traveled together for quite a while. Um, Man, what a dick! What a fucking dick! Uh, And just to back that up, there was one time, it was at the WrestleMania party in, I want to say, it was New Orleans or Brooklyn. It was right after him and Rowan just won the titles as the Bludgeon Brothers. And I walked up and it was all the Canadians and Brodie. So it was like, I don't think Edge wasn't there, but it was like Christian was there and Breeze was there. And I think Spears was standing there and Brodie was standing there. And we were always just like the complete assholes to each other because we'd all known each other for, so long and just been close to each other. And that was all we could say. It was like, oh, this is where the dicks hang out. You know what I mean? 'Cause it's one of those late nights of good partying after WrestleMania. Um, but I mean, uh, yeah, that one's, it just sucked. Like I thought I was pretty good, and then the 26th hit this year, and I was like, today's a mess. I just hate today. Um, but I mean, geez, I got all the time that me and him spent on the road, and just all the laughing. Like it was funny because like we could be, both of us could be in a completely shitty mood about being at work, which is already stupid in general because like we already knew that our jobs were awesome, but like neither of us half the time wanted to leave home because we were so mad about whatever was going on or like whatever we thought we had to go through. And we'd show up at the building and he would go from being just like the grumpiest old man to the biggest hellraiser, like, just a total motherfucker in the back where he would show up and like like I would not even be in as bad of a mood as he was, and I would just be angry as fuck by the time we got to the show because he was so grumpy about like leaving home and leaving his family that day, and he didn't want to deal with anybody or whatever. We were always like that with each other, and then he'd walk into the arena and he'd just look at somebody and he'd start fucking with them like just immediately, and he was always like completely relentless. It was like he would go around and just like poke, like just poke. Like he'd just be like, I know I can mess with this guy like this. I know I can mess with that guy like that. And by the time we'd leave the show, like half the time we were working with each other, and like it was always like by then we were having so much fun that even if whatever the situation was, how there's a lot of times we wound up doing just being in stupid situations. Like they got put on a European tour before the Bludgeon Brothers had debuted, and this was when we were doing the whole Fashion Files thing, and they put us with them against Breeze and Dango, like I don't know, No Way Jose or something, somebody else. Like it was something really random that didn't make any sense, and like the fans didn't get it. They were like, "What? Like these guys are friends. Why are they? And even we'd come in the back, and Fit Finley was like, "What the fuck? Like, I don't know what to do." But we just always make the best out of it, and he was always hilarious. Like there was a lot of things that like if you ever saw him perform on a live event, you definitely saw a different person than you got on TV, but not by much. You just got it like way turned up because he was really him, and he just wanted the world to see what he was.
Right.
It was so crazy to me because like I saw it every day, so I was like, how doesn't anybody else see it? Like I used to give him a hard time all the time because I'm like, you are a no talent backyard wrestler who was never trained, and yet I come from the dungeon, like a reputable wrestling school. I've gone through several wrestling schools, far more reputable, and I'm a completely accomplished technical wrestler. But you are an untrained backyard wrestler who thinks he's fucking world champion. I was like, where do you get off? Like we'd always rip him about that, man. It's always good. But that's what he was like. He knew he was a lot better than what he was, and he was not going to take no for an answer, and especially when it came to his family. Like that was one thing, the craziest thing to me. Like I'd be talking about different stuff or telling him to chill out. What's his rush? When we were on the road, he would always say, "No, I need to do this for my family." I was like, "Man, you're making money. Like you're gonna be okay. Everybody's gonna be okay." And what happened happened. And I'm so thankful that he got where he did to do what he did to make sure his family was taken care of. But that was one of the things that freaked me out the most about all that. It was just that revelation, because we used to have those talks all the time, where I was like, what's the rush? Now I know. Now I know.
Yeah, and that, and I appreciate you being honest of, as you say, busting his balls because y'all were friends about, being grumpy. It's one thing to be grumpy. All right, I'm on the road. I'm tired. I feel like this. I feel like that. But as us being men and being being a part of a family and sons, dads,
Yeah.
brothers, or what have you, the fact his main grumpiness is that I want to be with my family, and he did so much for his family. Of course it's going to get to you. You know how it is with men, testosterone. But it's like, you know what? I get it. You just love your family, and you getting down the groundwork for your family, and that's an amazing thing. So,
well, he was one of those guys, like WWE likes to say, like they make you family or whatever when you're there. Like, everybody's under the family, but he really took it to another level where he made them part of his family while he was there.
Yeah.
And he's one of those people that, like, when I really looked at it, I was like, wow, he really did it more than almost anybody else I can say. Like, there's, people that are, grandfathered in there who aren't nearly the person. And and that's not an offense. That's just the way he was. Like, he really took everybody in and made them all family.
Yeah, he was great, man. And like I said, the news of him passing, with the Y family with Bray and Brodie and Eric coming in, and they debuted here in Baltimore. I was there. I was here when they debuted, and everybody stood out. And our, when Brodie got a chance to shine a few times, SmackDown, couple matches, when Worlds Collide, he had the great match. It was like, dude, he's like great singles as well as tag. And he went to AEW and he had his run with Cody, and then next thing you know, he was sick. It was, and I'll say, I felt, so hurtful, in our house. Like, damn, bro, this guy, he just had that outpouring, and I'll say this, and I know Axel will come back this up. I'm sure you can. I haven't seen that much in a wrestling community I haven't seen that much outpouring of love since Eddie. Granted, we know Benoit was a different case. We know what that was about. We interviewed Harley. Harley, we knew he was older, sick. Some wrestlers passed away. We know they're older. Their time is kind of ticking. Still sad. But when Brodie went, I ain't, since Eddie, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, you in the business, you one of the boys. Yeah, actually, again, I haven't seen that kind of outpouring of love since when Eddie went. It's like everybody, WWE, AEW, TNA, Ring of Honor, everyone was just nothing but love. And it wasn't just people, and something Sabu said too, in a recent interview, he was right. He said, unfortunately, when people die, they want to make them saints all the time, and it's not true. Thing is, with Brodie, even before he passed, no one had nothing bad to say about him. Everybody loved Brodie. We interviewed hella people. You've been in the business. Everyone, it was never anything negative to say about Brodie. In the business, that's rare. 9 times out of 10, 1, 2 people gonna say something negative about somebody. Brodie is one of them. So when he passed, he showed even more of the love that he had. It was like, damn, he just saw you on TV, but he was just this amazing guy, man. You a little muted, brother. Trying to get our sound right for him. Give us 1 second. Get our sound right. Vic just now getting his headphones in. What's going on now?
just went out.
Yeah,
He
just
probably gonna
Can you hear me
be
now?
probably going
yes.
back in.
You can hear me now?
Yeah, we can hear you.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry about that. My other ones died on me.
Oh, it's all
there we
cool.
go.
What you
There we
say?
go. We're talking about Brodie. What was it again?
Some of Brodie. Just the love and
Yeah.
outpouring that he had.
Yeah, it was one of those things where, like I said, like I was always amazed because like I got such a grumpy man in the car, and it wasn't like he was, mad at people or anything like that, but just like both of us, um, it was always so funny to me because like we'd get in the vehicle, we just wanted to go to our hotel rooms, or like we just wanted to go to eat and then go to bed. Like that was about it. But he would show up in an arena, and I mean, honestly, like you could just go down the line and he would just sit there and pick everyone from backstage crew to workers, like everybody. Like he would just sit there and mess with everybody. And like it is funny to me when like there is so much love to pour out for somebody because he really was such a dick. Like backstage all the time. And but it was like one of those good dicks. It's like one of those guys, you hate that you love him so much most of the time. Like even like his wife Amanda, she had sent me something um, not too long after he'd passed when we were talking, and even then she had said to me, "What a dick." So it's just it's funny when you do think about how much you love somebody for the way they are, but you love them, and that's still how you kind of label them in the same way. But that was him. Like everything I saw from him, and what he was doing in the Dark Order before he just slipped away there. I could tell every time they had to cut, or every time he was trying to hide how hard he was trying not to laugh about how much of a dick he was being, or like how he was looking and stuff. Like, and there was a few of us, like we had a group chat with him. We would just give it to him all the time after that stuff because we were just like, really? Like, you're gonna treat these guys like that? Like, they look up to you, and just like really try to make them, just messing back with them.
It,
Yeah,
it
man.
is how it used to be hilarious was because I seen him in WWE when he was with the Wyatt family. Even when he did his singles, and then when he went with the Bludgeon Brothers, and then when he came to AEW, I'm like, wait a minute, time out. He's good on the mic. He came in out like a boss. I'm like, wait, I don't remember this. And
No,
then
so
just the way he was his interaction, I'm like, yo, why is he so funny? What is going on? There was a couple of times in the scene on break. I'm like, come on, dude, keep the guys.
yeah,
Come on.
yeah, he was something else, man. Like there's always something with him. Like, and that's what was funny was like I could never be scared of him. Looking at him as the Wyatt family, you know what I mean? And it's just because I knew him too well. Like Rowan, I know him well too, but he will kill you if he wants to. He's too strong.
Oh, snap.
Uh,
He looked like it. He looked like it. Good
the dude's
lord.
a monster. So literally, when we were used to work, it would be we would kind of do tag matches or like 8-man tags on tour a lot against them, and so Connor and Rowan traveled together a lot. But they were super mean to each other in a funny way all the time, and they still are when they see each other. It's just anybody that has a relationship with Rowan, other than me, I think, kind of does it with him. Not sure why. But they would get in the ring and just start beating the shit out of each other. And
Jeez.
me and Brodie would just look at each other from across the ring and be like, why? Oh, like nobody needs that
What?
tonight. Yeah, and just the difference between the two of them. Like they're both such great dudes. And like I'm so thankful in my career that I even just got to, work in that situation and even experience the fact that there's something you appreciate like that much more. Like even when it's somebody that like I was super. I moved back to where I did just actually to be closer to them that was one of the reasons. I was like, that's one of my good friends, and you know, I don't want to be that far away from him, especially after we got released.
Right.
And you know, it's messed up because it literally happened a year later after we were released. We'd still see each other all the time because you know, we'd always worked out and, you know, and doing stuff together. And even by the time that happened, I was like, it was funny because I actually got a text from Matt Seidel, who's like, "Hey, have you talked to Brodie in a while?" And I was like, "No,
Yeah.
that asshole doesn't text me anymore. You know, I guess he's too big league for me now or something, you know." And then I thought about it. I'm like, that is really weird. I hadn't heard from him for about a month. And then like I kind of got the news about the situation just before, and it was just so weird because it's like that was one of my best friends, and I never got to say goodbye or anything like that. Like that, I swear to God, that video I have of him ringing the bell, that's at the gym that we would train at, and I'm pretty sure that was the last day I ever saw him, and I was like, man, that's it's weird. It's really weird. That was one of those weird, and I don't know. I've been through a lot, like ever since that happened, and there's so many weird things about him that I can't explain. I mean, I can explain it better now. Um, there was something strange about him. It was just otherworldly, and I tell you this, he didn't give a shit about anything otherworldly. The whole time we were together, I'd be trying to talk to him about stuff, and he's like, "I don't care. I don't care about that stuff." And I'm like, "What? Like you don't?" He'd be like, "No." He's like, "I'm focused on my family and taking care of them. That's all I care about." Like it was just wild to me. So it's one of those people in my life who is like somehow a weird guru that I didn't learn anything from at all until he was gone.
Like one of them old and EXO, you know, I know you're a big martial arts, like them old senseis, like white, you know, the white brow or the sit there.
Priest
Yeah.
Padme.
You're
Yeah.
right, yeah, to sit there, to sit there.
Well, I mean, he
It's like
never
he's
seemed
proud
like
of
it.
you, but you know, like
Yeah.
no, I don't want you to see me proud of you, but know that I am proud of you.
Yeah. Yeah, definitely. He's one of
Well,
those guys because, like, he always, I mean, he'd give you anything but the shirt on his back because he really loved that wife beater. So,
Jeez, he did.
yeah,
Oh man,
look, man,
that looked
look,
like that was his lucky
look,
tank top.
yep,
it's the Brody, brother. This
yeah,
is
that
Brody
one
Lee, man.
definitely is. Definitely.
Thoughts out.
Cheers.
Cheers to Brody,
I
man.
do, I do have, I do have a question for you, and
Hmm?
I always wanted to know this. So, how did you feel? And these are two moments in time. One, how did you feel when you first seen you and your partner as action figures? And how did you feel when you seen yourself in a wrestling game, like like on the PlayStation or Xbox? And do you own one of your own action figures?
I still have every one. Yeah, actually. That was one of the coolest things ever, actually, with WWE. Like, that was one of those moments where, like, I felt like I'd really made it. Because actually, the first time I ever saw an action figure, had just gotten home from TV, and I had gotten the video game that we were in for the first time, like not the downloadable content, but actually in the game. And I was showing my girlfriend at the time. I was like, "Whoa, look at this!" And all of a sudden, there was like a knock at the doorbell rings or whatever. And I was like, "I'm not expecting nothing. Are you expecting nothing?" Like, no, nobody's expecting anything. Open the door, and it's this big box. It just says Mattel on the side.
Oh,
And
snap.
I was like, "What the shit is this?" And yeah, I popped it open, and there was, our very first action figure. And I was literally like looking at myself on my TV screen on the video game, and there was a box of my action figures right there. And it was literally it's the most surreal moment ever. Like in, a kid's brain, like it just, everything explodes right at that point in time. And it's
Right.
just like, even the last time I got to go home and like see all my friends after so long, they're like, dude, like that's one of the things they always say, like you're an action figure, like you're in a video game, like what the fuck, dude? I saw you on TV and stuff, and it's crazy because I grew up in a small town, like I didn't grow up in a big city anywhere where being something is really that possible. Like especially in a
Right.
small town, northern Alberta, like everybody either worked in the oil field or in a trade or in an office building, one of the two, basically. And I just said that wasn't for me, and I was going to go do something else. And so, like when I did all that, and I think even I'm pretty sure it was probably within a month or two of that, like I met my favorite musician of all time, and like it was ridiculous. I was just like, it
Who
was all
is?
unreal. I got nothing. Oh, it's Danzig. It was Glenn Danzig.
Yeah, we're
Nice.
And
musicians. I'm a bass guitarist, and
oh, nice,
Exo is a MC. He's a rapper. So
nice.
Producer. I'm actually that's why I kept muting my microphones. It's actually chopping up a sample right now. I ain't
Oh,
want to
gotcha.
interrupt
You're
what's going on.
multitasking.
Yes, very
so
much so.
You got
so
to. You got to
you
be.
you mentioned Victor about music, and I told you we talked off air about how we random and shit.
Mm,
I got an idea what one of these groups are going to be. You mentioned about music.
mm-hmm.
Top 5 greatest rock bands.
Oh shit.
Top 5. And
Like one of
Victor's
my.
my rock bands.
Sorry, say that again. It cut out a bit.
Top 5 greatest rock bands.
One of my top five,
Yeah,
or you want me to list my top five?
your top 5.
Um, oh man.
Oh
See,
damn.
I always go Danzig, Black Label, Pantera. I'm wearing a Dimebag Daryl shirt right now. So that's three. Like that's three of my favorites of all time. 6 Feet Under was also one of my
Oh shit.
favorites.
Yeah.
Okay.
Like I'm a death metal, hard rock type guy.
I
But then
see.
too, like man, I can sit there and I'll listen to a Deep Purple album and be like, man, this still kicks ass like over anything nowadays.
Yeah.
And just stuff like that. Like I grew up on a lot of classic rock and like evolved into kind of like heavy metal and stuff.
Mhm.
Um, so I mean, like those are, I mean, yeah, those are definitely top three at least for me. Four and five, like it's funny. I listen to my buddies all the time who are in Scattered Hamlet. I had my buddy Adam Jode, who's like their front man, singer, guitar player on my podcast not long ago. Just because like it was funny when I met him, they were actually guys that I met on the road and I never heard their music. And I liked them so much that when I got home, I was like, I really better like their music. And then when I played it, I was like, oh, thank God, these guys I like them a lot. Like, yeah. Um, then too, like I used to be such a huge Rob Zombie fan, and like at one point, I would probably say like White Zombie, Rob Zombie for me, and then I really didn't care for his last album, which is weird. Like I'm funny with music where sometimes I'll just be like, oh, maybe it was just my first playthrough, and then I'll listen to it again, and I'm like, no, I still didn't care for that. Or else it's like, no, I really did like that. Oh, here's all my
Yeah.
favorite songs on the album, and his last
Right.
one I just didn't get into whatsoever.
Oh no.
So
Yeah.
Misfits. I know you
Uh,
put a lot of Misfits up.
Yeah, well, like Danzig, like I said, like man, that was maybe one of the most unreal moments ever of my career was getting to go to like the first Misfits reunion, Chicago Riot Fest, and being invited by them at that same point in time, which was uh, unreal. Like as a music lover and being, I got Danzig tattooed on my arm. Uh,
Nice.
being able to see that was just unreal. I've been pretty lucky. Like I'm really like, even when I'm pissed off about wrestling and I think about it, I'm like, no, I did pretty much all the shit I dreamed of that was never possible to a kid from nowhere. You know what I mean? I'm literally from nowhere, Alberta, Canada, and I did, all the stuff that I put on my list as being like, this will never happen to you. This will never ever come true in your life. I did it.
Awesome.
So,
Awesome. Um, how was This might be opening up a can of worms, but let's do it. How was life training in the dungeon?
I mean, it was awesome. Like, I wouldn't trade it for anything.
Nice.
I mean, I learned so much there in so many different ways about the business that just carried on forever. Like, the dungeon was something like you just never knew what you'd expect kind of walking in. Like, even like, what condition will the dungeon be in today when I get there?
Oh
Um,
shit.
because there was many random house pets that would sometimes,
Oh my goodness.
I don't know, we didn't know what it was on the mat, and we'd have to show up and wash it off. Um,
Jeez.
there was always fun, random people that were coming in who would live at the house. They'd kind of get taken in because there were so many characters that came through there when I started at Stampede Wrestling. Like, I can remember my first year in Stampede Wrestling, I probably saw 100 people come and go, and there was maybe 5 of us that stayed. You know what I mean? And the rest were just amazingly awesome random people. Like, there's so many characters, like, and even the friends that I've made from there, because like I was in the dungeon for about 7 years, 6 or 7 years, before it finally shut down and they sold the house after Stu passed. But
Oh no.
there's so many characters, so many good times, and above all else, Bruce Hart really taught at least me and the other people that I know stuck with it. He taught us how to like really protect ourselves in wrestling. Like, there's a reason I've got a 20-year career and I'm not completely broken. I'm not going to say my body feels great, but like I took a lot of bumps and I learned to really protect myself on a lot of things because, as I learned, Bruce Hart pissed off a lot of people in his time in wrestling, and almost everybody he worked hated him and tried to hurt him at some point in time. And so he had a story about everybody that messed him up. Um, and this is how to protect yourself from those things, which he taught very well. And then it was funny because as I traveled over the years and different places, I met a lot of guys that knew Bruce Hart and had tried to fuck him up.
Well, I'll tell you this. I never said this on air, but Bruce Hart had a show, Heartbeat Radio.
Oh,
Shout
that's
out to
right. Yeah.
shout out to our good buddy Jim Johnson. Well, I was one of the producers of Heartbeat Radio for a couple
Was
of
that
weeks.
Bob Johnson?
Bob Johnson, yep.
Yes.
And
Yes. I remember
Bob,
them very well. Yes.
he just retired, a good personal friend. It is no such thing as a small conversation with Bob. When
No,
Bob
no,
called you,
definitely.
you
There's
better
no
make
such
sure.
thing.
Right?
No, Bob Johnson.
Hey,
Oh,
brother,
oh,
you
oh.
got a second to talk? And a second for Bob is like 40 minutes. That's minimum.
That's funny. I didn't know that you knew them. It's been a while since I've run into anybody that knew Bobby J.
Bob is
Oh man.
he's been a good silent contributor to my show. He's called me random when my mom was living. I took care of my mom for, like I said, 4 years while I did air. He would check on me. Hey, just calling to check on you while this
Oh wow.
hard. So with Heartbeat Radio, I actually helped produce for Brett. I mean, not for Brett, for Bruce.
Oh, gotcha.
So when Bruce was on Heartbeat Radio, I would talk to Bruce about structure, about interviews, how to talk, or what have you. And Axel will tell you, we went across, we're not gonna say names, of some of the boys, and they're like, we wanted to fuck Bruce up. It's that other.
I mean,
Yeah, and I'm like, damn,
Bruce.
he
I
had
mean,
that much
Bruce was
heat.
he was a real shit disturber.
Yeah.
And like, but I mean, like, it's so funny to me because like I seen so many of those people, and even when I think about it, like Bruce didn't really try to rib me that much. He was legendary for just like terrible ribs, like on
Yeah.
people that were only to like entertain himself. But like the worst I ever got it was there was one point where I was like, I'm pretty sure I've lost like my last 10 matches to like low blows. And like that was it. But like I
Man.
never cared. I just went out and had my match and tried to have the best match I could that,
Yeah.
happened to end that way. But like, man, that was it. And he like it was so funny because like he would always tell me stuff. He was kind of always he had a very interesting way of teaching me um, when I was around, and like it's so wild to me because like I owe him a lot. Like I've always actually like put him over anytime I think
Yeah,
about him. Like
yeah,
you know, like it's just funny to me because I got such a different experience out of him than other people, and I can't explain why. I have no idea why. Like if he just thought I looked like I was some silent murderer that would actually come kill him or something. But yeah, I was always really cool with them. I was very thankful for I like he taught me a lot of stuff that just always stuck with me. And even just showing like there was no promoter that really surprised me after Bruce Hart. Like, you know, he was something else. Like I got to work with him a lot. Like we had a really good feud with him and TJ. Me and a buddy of mine, Dave Swift and Stampede, that went on for a while when
yeah,
it was running pretty hot when I was there. And you know, it's weird. Like my one friend that I said, even when we did that feud, like he didn't make it out of Stampede. He went to England and Japan at one point in time. When he came back from England, I think for the second time, he was just like kind of done with it. He was just like, this sucks. It just wasn't going to get any better. And even I was kind of almost at the same point at that time, but I was like, I'm still going to keep going. Like something keeps going. And I don't
right.
think it would have had any of those doors open up if it had not been for Stampede Wrestling and just for the Hart family, actually. Like,
Yeah, Bruce is. I tell anybody this. I know Bruce as Bruce. I helped produce his show. Bruce was always great to me. I'm
I
not
mean,
one of
he's
the
hilarious.
boys. Right, he's hilarious. He can talk.
Yeah.
So between Bruce and Bob,
Oh, yeah.
good guy. Both of them are great guys, and they definitely helped me out. And I haven't talked to Bruce and since COVID, not since COVID, but I definitely try to keep
Oh.
up with him. Bob's doing well.
Well,
Um,
I know his wife passed away just before COVID or something. Bruce's
Bob?
wife. No, Bruce's wife.
Bruce. Oh man.
Yeah, Andrea. I can't remember exactly when. I just remember I still talk to one of the cousins back in Calgary all the time,
Yeah, I
and he
meant to
told
check.
me when it happened. So
I meant to
I
check him.
know.
Yeah, I remember
Yeah.
speaking to his wife in the past, and I know Bruce was like a teacher, like a school
Yep.
teacher, still taught school. And
Yep.
I talked to one of his kids before, so I'll reach out to Bruce. I'm glad you mentioned that just to check up on him. But now I gotta ask you, brother, you
Hmm.
from the dungeon? Do you have a Stu Hart impression? Can you impersonate Stu Hart?
Everybody's got a too hard impression. I mean, that's all. Like Stu, like that was Stu. And Stu. By the time I knew him, he was already in his late 80s. But I'd see him, and he'd just go, he'd go to shake his hand, and he'd shake my hand, and then he'd like look at my hand and go, "Yeah, your hands. They remind me of." Can't remember who he would say, but then he'd sit there, kind of talking to me like he had such a grip, just the way his hands like reach around, and then whoever was standing next to me, he would suddenly grab them and just like put him in a submission hold. Like he would just immediately like
God,
tap them out, and he would just be like, he just grab you, and he just like snatch whoever was next to me, who like he wasn't even looking at them until then, and they'd be like, "Oh my God, Stu, stop it!" And he'd just be like,
That's the response.
"It's really you." That was, I mean, that was always Stu, man. Like
just
I had
Oh
a lot of
man,
blatantly tapping
really cool.
people out. Jesus.
that has to be all the Stu Hart stories we heard him and told. That has to be one. Just like a switch go off, just put your ass to the submission.
Oh, it's been a while actually since I thought about it, but yeah, Stu, he always did that. Like I was one of those things where I was like, I've watched him stretch like 100 people. He's never touched me once. Like, but he would always do that when I'd see him at like an event or at the house or something. If like it was me and somebody else, and I shook his hand, I don't know what it was that set him off about my
Your
hands, but he
grip,
told
man.
me that,
You had
yeah,
that
same thing. Well, because Stu still he had a grip. Like that was the thing. Like he was old and didn't move fast, but like when he got a hold of you, like holy
That was
cow!
it.
Like
that was
yeah,
it.
I still watched him stretch some pretty strong young guys. Like he did teach me how to do a sugar hold, and like Tenzan's finish is technically a stew hold, more or less.
Yeah, Tenzan.
Yeah, the Anaconda Vice. It's more or less.
Yeah.
That's more or less the sugar hold. But then there was another one that Stu did, that I would occasionally bust out in training on somebody, and it doesn't look like much until the guy's face is turning red out of nowhere, and then then he's like sitting there squirming trying to get out. I'm like, yeah, it's really weird how that one works, but yeah, Stu showed that one to me, and that's a funny one.
Speaking of adjusting the amateur to pro, I amateur wrestled middle school, high school, and college, and our good buddy Dan Severin.
Oh wow.
He put the nicest guy that could kill you. We're good friends with Ken Shamrock too. And I saw them do a move in the UFC where you put the knee in the middle of their back and you grab both their arms. And I was in a wrestling tournament. I did it. It was in a practice. It was a league one. I did it. I was like, oh, this move don't hurt. And I did it. And the guy's eyes were starting to turn red.
Oh yeah.
Teach me that move. Teach me that move. So I don't know what it was called, but I learned it from Dan. Didn't teach me how to do it. I saw Dan do it on Raw. And I started doing it. So them older guys, and as I tell people, some of the nicest people in life can literally kill you. So the UFC guys, MMA wrestlers, nicest people to get a hold of you. That's definitely it. Let's have a little fun here. You talk about me, talking about wrestling and music here. You talked about Brodie. Talked about your developmental, your adjustments from WWE, Stampede, and we'll talk about NXT in a second. Talk about this, man. You're a Canadian.
Yep.
What are some of the misconceptions that people have? I'm American. I know you're American, but people that's never been in Canada, I got close friends that are Canadian, full-blooded. What are some misconceptions of Canada, man?
Oh, we're not as nice as everybody makes us out to be on TV. I mean, that always what makes me laugh, where it's just, I don't think we apologize as much as, on movies and stuff that they make it out to be. I used to say the accent didn't exist, but then after I moved back, after living in Kentucky for a few years, I actually started to hear it. When I would go back home, and I was like, oh, it really does exist. Like, and I used to think it was mainly an East Coast thing in Canada, but then I started noticing it more on the West. Other misconceptions? I don't know. I don't know if there's really many more.
There's a
Canada can be
stereotype.
tough,
There's a stereotype. And my buddy Dennis will get me for this. He lives in Canada. Love you, Dennis. Maple syrup.
I mean, I still love maple syrup. What's wrong with that?
Who
doesn't love maple syrup on your pancakes?
Right.
Like it's the best.
Here's this. Because it's a stereotype. Every Canadian love maple syrup. I met a couple that don't.
Well, I mean, I love blueberry syrup and strawberry syrup on my pancakes too, but I mean, that's just what kind of pancakes am I having today?
I'm with you.
Right.
When we travel to the Waffle House, when we in Delaware, travel the country, always use what I use, blueberry syrup.
Yeah.
Now, Victor, have you had king syrup before?
King syrup?
Yes.
Yes.
I have not. No, I
King
feel like
syrup.
Never had king syrup.
So
that syrup that you could use as a replacement for tobacco or tar.
So what I'm gonna do as a gift to you, we'll talk after air. We're going to ship you a bottle of king syrup. You can only get it in the East Coast. Okay. It's thick and it has a little lion on there. I'm gonna send you a picture. We'll talk out there. As a thank you, I'm gonna send you some king syrup, and I want you, as a Canadian, give your right, give your thoughts on that syrup, because you only can get it in the East Coast. You only can get it over here, like Baltimore. I think it's only Baltimore. You can't get it in like New York. You can't get it in PA.
Okay.
So
boy, that syrup is thick. I mean, I swear you could glue two pieces of bread together.
In fact, keep talking. I'm gonna show you how it looks.
That sounds good to me. I mean, I make pancakes all the time, so.
See, you sound like my lady, because Every morning, if I'm off from work, I get up with you want pancakes. I'm in there with
nice.
pancakes.
See this?
Okay, no, I have not seen that before.
This is King Syrup. This is $4 a bottle. And when the COVID hit,
wow.
When COVID hit, you cannot find this shit anyway.
Oh man,
no.
Wow.
So we're gonna sing you. You see the little line on here, MGM line?
Yeah, I see that. That's
so
sweet,
we're gonna sing you a bottle in a couple of weeks.
Hell yeah! All right.
King Syrup is the truth.
Put it on pan, and look, it's thick, so it ain't gonna like melt and none of that. It's like
Be careful with it, bro.
I'm excited about that. It's like slow coming out of the bottle, right?
Yep,
Like
exactly.
in the fridge. So
you can sit there looking at it like, oh, hell, yeah.
That's the good stuff.
I'm
excited about that. All right.
Now you got Batman, you got Beast Boy in the back. We gotta ask you, well, number one, who is the best Batman, and who was the best Joker?
Oh boy.
Oh wow, that's a tough one. So, well, best Batman, my favorite animated one is Kevin Conroy.
Of course.
Signed the toy that I got up there. I'll show you that one.
Oh man,
let's see where am I? Oh, I gotta watch it. Oh, if I stand up, then I can see it. Oh, there it is.
Oh, the people right there. Yes.
Yeah. So the Batman thing on there, the one in the box is signed by Kevin Conroy, who is the voice of the animated. Yes. And so him and Mark Hamill are definitely my favorite Batman and Joker from all the animated stuff.
Yes.
And then I'm really excited because I heard that Michael Keaton is going to be returning as Batman in the future, and he is still probably my favorite out of all of the Batman movies.
Yeah, the best Batman.
So
you gotta do the Keaton mouth, man.
Yeah. He has that like somehow like the only one. Like even Kilmer was always trying to do it, kind of like in that terrible movie. But I mean,
that never happened.
Yeah, like it popped me because like I watched. I was a big fan of like the Dark Knight series. I liked it, but sometimes Christian Bale is just a little too much for me. And then when I went back and watched the original, or you watch Batman Returns, which is that's probably my favorite of all time. Like I was just like, man, this is so awesome. And he doesn't change his voice like whatsoever. Like Keaton's just like the same all the way through, and it just like works so good. So and then from the movies, whew, I mean. Nicholson and Heath Ledger both did just a hell of a job. Like it's, I mean, it's different. It's different ends of the Joker spectrum, right? Like Nicholson did such a good Cesar Romero Joker, like kind of like to that time. And I really liked Cesar Romero in the original.
Oh yeah, of course.
And I loved Adam West as well in the original Batman. But I liked Nicholson, and then like Heath Ledger did such a good dark version. I thought of everything. Like, and I just mean that like there was no chance. Like I wish they had waited a long time before they had put somebody in Suicide Squad as the Joker, because like I'm sure eventually Leto would have done a good job, maybe. But like that was just such a weird way to go after that was the last Joker we got. To me, I was just like, there's no one that can follow this up after he passed away too. Like after he, died after leaving that. I was like, they should have just kind of left it alone for a little bit longer.
Now, we'll say this in me, like top 5 movies of all time, Batman '89. I just bought the 10. Batman is my favorite hero. 80-year anniversary. I got tons of Batman memorabilia. I just bought like the 10. What you call it, like the DVD with the 10 case.
Oh, gotcha. Yeah, I know which one you're talking. It's the big collection of.
Right, and I bought that, and Michael Keaton was great because I remember, he was Mr. Mom. So like Michael Keaton is Batman, but he had the great separation. You see him as Bruce Wayne.
Yeah,
you're not going to ever think he was Batman.
Yeah,
he's in the Batman costume, so it was a good separation where logistically, literally, if you saw him as Bruce Wayne, you would never think he was Batman. He was Batman.
Yeah.
And Vicky Vale was just
Basing it.
hot as
Yeah.
hell back in the 80s. I don't know what happened 8 Mile, but that's another story. But
I mean, even when they got like I always loved his interaction, even in the second one with Michelle Pfeiffer.
oh yeah.
Because like
That
they,
shit was-
even as they're kind of going through their thing of like discovering that they are one another, you still wouldn't really be able to tell with the two of them because they played the different, polarities of their characters so well. Yeah.
right.
Yeah, it was awesome.
And shout out to our man Christopher Walken. He was in there.
Yes. Oh yeah.
People forget.
Funny story was a buddy of mine in LA was good friends with the guy Andy that plays Christopher Walken's son in that movie, and
Nice.
he was also Leatherface in a couple of the Texas Chainsaw Massacres. And so when I used to always see him out, he was this monster of a human being. In all honesty, he's a giant man, and I would always see him out at the bar or something, and I would immediately just be like, "Dude, I just watched Batman Returns." Just on TV, and I almost always would have just seen it on TV, and I'd always watch for his scenes, and I'd get him to do the stuff from Batman Returns, and it was still spot on. Like it was great. It was so good.
Yeah, this is great. What's your thoughts on, and the fan question too? One, what's your thoughts on Batfleck, Ben Affleck as Batman, and two, what's your thoughts on the Joaquin Phoenix Joker?
Oh, I thought so. It was weird. I'm not really a big Joaquin Phoenix fan, and I didn't know how I was going to take to it when I watched that movie. And actually, within like 10 minutes of the movie, before he puts on paint or anything else, I was like, oh shit, he's already the Joker. I thought he just knocked it out of the ballpark. Like, honestly, he is probably one of my favorites. Um, I think it's just going to like take a while to really like have it set in as like how good that is. Like, I know it did so well, but he did really such a good embodiment of the Joker. I don't think they've seen that anybody's seen before, and that was the thing. I almost didn't care by the time he put the paint on because he was so there, kind of from the beginning. Where, like, I mean, I've read a lot of Batman and I read a lot of Joker stuff, so like to see that kind of dark side embodied and transformed in that way, I thought was incredible. And Affleck was kind of the same, like not as obviously as awesome as what Joaquin did, but I didn't think I was gonna like him as Batman. But then when I realized they had him playing kind of like that older version of Batman and the way he did it, I was kind of like, I don't hate this as much as I thought I was gonna. Like, I'm not a big fan of Batman versus Superman because it's too much of a Superman movie.
Oh gosh.
Which is kind of like I had to watch that one like a bunch of times because I was like, what do I hate about this movie? And it took me a while to be like, oh, it's because it's just like a bunch of Superman stuff. It's like really boring, more or less. It's kind of what does it. But I was like, I like the way Affleck portrayed like the older, kind of angry, bitter Bruce Wayne, like just that little bit grizzled. So, I thought he actually did a really good job. Like he wasn't just Ben Affleck.
He was like thick and fat in a way, and he was just like, it's,
like it made sense to me once I saw that he was the older version, supposedly. You know
like
what I mean?
100 kind of thing.
Yeah.
Now,
he was the Batman from the Dark Knight Frank Miller storyline.
Yeah, that was what I felt more or less. Yeah, right. Once I saw that one, I was like, oh, but they just kind of messed up the weird timelines. Being like, oh, Batman's old and here's Superman just showing up. I was like, what? This is fucked up.
So what's crazy? Yeah, it was. But what's crazy is they wasn't wrong because that actually happened in the comic book. But to tie that with the Superman, with the Man of Steel, they tied that in with the Man of Steel, and then they brought Doomsday in there. I'm like, wait, time out. Why y'all meshing two different timelines? Like the Dark Knight that happened like in the far future, and Superman dies happen and that, what the fuck are y'all doing? This is horrible.
That movie legitimately, I went to the theaters to see all of them. That movie legitimately gave me a headache because all of that. And I'm just thinking in my head, like, what the hell? What is happening? Kevin Costner, we love Kevin Costner. Field of Dreams, Bodyguard. He plays the same fucking role. Old, stern, attractive black man as a farmer. Watch Yellowstone, same person. Man of Steel, same person. It's like
he's just always old man Kent from now on. That's all he is. I mean, he's probably. I think he's probably one of the only guys actually now around from his generation that can pull that off all the time, right? Like a lot of the guys that used to fill those roles have now kind of like passed on. So
Charles Bronson.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, Liam Neeson, he could do it.
True, but now he's just like a big action star. He's too busy kicking everyone's ass in every movie he does. Like Qui-Gon was the last like old man, wise man that he played that wasn't just beating the shit out of somebody.
Can you imagine Charles Bronson as Daddy Clark? Says little words like fuck you. No. Go ahead.
My man going to the my man just pulled out what you call the glove compartment out, pulled a gun out, like, you know what? Go ahead.
Charles Bronson in his movie said probably maximum of 100 words. You know that. He ain't say much.
Exactly. Those are the guys that are the best, you know. You don't need to say much. Get your point across.
My man said like 3 words. That's it.
With movies, man, I do my research. You a horror movie fan?
I mean, I used to be. I'm not as much anymore. Newer ones, I feel like a lot of the times it's just kind of the same stuff, kind of regurgitated a lot nowadays. So it's been a while since like I can remember seeing one that really got me. Like I know I liked a lot of the kind of series that have come out somewhat. Like I'm hit and miss with stuff nowadays. Like I'm so picky nowadays. It's unreal with it. But you know, like I'm an old school like Hellraiser fan.
Oh yeah,
stuff like that.
Shout out, Hellraiser. Right
there. You know, and I'm not talking about
the
like what is it?
That new
like
shit.
There's now like 9 of them or something
that
like
new
that.
Shit, that's horrible. The last one, Hellraiser, Pinhead was sitting in the corner, sitting on the floor. Like, what the fuck is happening? Why you?
Only the first 2. I don't even acknowledge the newer ones. After the first 2, I don't know. It's nothing else.
Yeah. See, I like up to Bloodline, like, and even the one that was after that. I can't remember what it was called.
3 or 4. Bloodline's
4. And Bloodline, like that's when every horror movie went to space from the time. So, but like they only kind of ended that one in space. Like they kind of made sense. But like at that time it was Leprechaun in space, Jason Goes to Space, all this stuff. Yeah, it was wild. But like I like those ones, and then Inferno, and even like by the time you get to Hellraiser 3, it's a different writer. It's not Barker anymore, and then you can feel the change. But I'm a big Clive Barker fan. Like I read a lot of his stuff. I'm a big fan of his. His writing's unreal, and even what they've transferred from his stuff like into the movies is pretty awesome. Like Midnight Meat Train was really like a short story that they turned into an hour-and-a-half movie.
I didn't even know that was badass. It. Good Lord, nice.
Yeah, and they stay pretty true. Like they only add in kind of like some of like the Bradley Cooper's like relationship stuff that wasn't really in the story, because like it was just a short story from the Books of Blood, which is also a movie on. I know it was on Hulu. I think I saw it, and it was pretty good. It was like a pretty good depiction of what even that, like the kind of collective short stories in the Books of Blood were. So, like I'm a horror fan in that aspect. There's some old school writers that I really like. Some old school stuff that I really like.
What would be your top 3 for us horror movies personally for you, Victor? Movies that like creep you the fuck out, or you just give you like a good experience. You go old school because we're old school.
I mean, Hellraiser 2 is one of my favorites. It was so funny. I was showing my girlfriend a couple of years ago. I just started playing Hellraiser 2, and I hadn't watched it for a while, and I still knew all the lines, like all of Pinhead's lines and stuff like that. And I was just like so into it. I still loved it so much. And I got all the Halloween movies. I mean, the original one was great. I loved Rob Zombie's version. More so the first one than the second one.
Yeah, second one.
It's weird. When I saw the second one, I went and saw it in the theater. And the first time I saw it, I went, that was like a really artsy way to look at the Halloween story. Then every time I've watched it since it came out on DVD, I'm like, that's not the same movie I saw in the theater. I don't know what the hell's wrong with me. Like, it was so many like weird differences that I've even looked for deleted scenes that I'm like, did I see a different movie in the theater? Like, it was weird. And I just remember, like, every time I've watched it on like DVD afterwards, you just feel awful after you watch that movie. There's just something about it that leaves you just feeling terrible. Like, it's like an hour and a half or 2 hours of just like the worst feeling that you can possibly imagine in your life. Like, that's kind of how I feel like after watching Zombies Halloween 2.
Good Lord, I never seen it. I don't want to now.
I mean, like, it's interesting. Like, it's interesting, but yeah, that's my lasting impression after I've watched it. And then,
so how do you feel about Halloween Kills? And that's not good.
I mean, I was like, why is Michael Myers throwing roundhouse kicks and shit now? That was kind of how I felt about that, because I really liked the one that they did before.
Yeah,
it was awesome.
Yeah, like when they did the return or whatever it was, I thought that one was awesome. And then this one, I was literally like, why are the murder scenes like now action scenes? Like, it's not like that's not Halloween. Like, and just, I don't know. It's so weird. I think it's like a weird look at culture now, to see how like they tried to change Halloween. And it's weird. Like, I know Danny McBride wrote that part of that movie, and I usually really enjoy his writing and his acting and stuff. And I just didn't dig it. Yeah.
Like the last scene where the town finally and they banged the hell out of him. But he got up, and I swear to God, he sized him up. I felt like I was looking at Sherlock Holmes when he just played everything on his head and just went ape shit in the middle of everything. That's what he did. I'm like,
yeah, it was like he went Neo on them or something. Like, he was out of the Matrix all of a sudden.
It's a WWE ending. Right there.
Pill. Shit.
Yeah.
Is that not a WWE writing segment? Right there.
Yeah.
I think it's all. It's like he was.
I mean, I see a lot of wrestling and stuff nowadays. Like, I just watched Spider-Man the other week, and there was so much wrestling in their fighting scenes. There's power bombs, hurricane ranas, also like the takedowns and stuff. I'm like, who the fuck did this? Come on.
Like, when the hell Spider-Man started to a whole takedown?
Like, I just watched what's his name, Willem Dafoe, like, powerbomb Spider-Man. I was like, come on.
God damn, wait a minute. Talk about, I ain't see it yet. What the hell?
Sorry. There's a spoiler for you. Spoiler. That's all I'll say. I won't say anymore.
Well, for sure. So it's a scene with Willem Dafoe powerbomb Spider-Man.
I'm pretty sure
what? Motherfucker?
William Dafoe, he about 70, 68.
Yeah, exactly. Awesome, though. Still looks
it's
great.
Like Halloween Kills, like they beating the shit out of him. And I'm like, why the fuck did y'all stop? WWE. He beat up Cena.
Yep.
What are you doing?
Superman's coming back.
My man got up and started serving everybody. I'm like, yo, what the hell?
Powerbomb. Hogan just hulked up. It's like, what the hell is happening? they 50-50 booking, man. They gotta write it out for part 3. You know how it is.
Yeah. Oh, you know what? So something just popped up in my head, and this is, I feel like you're the perfect person to get answer this. So a couple of years ago, Bret Hart, along with Farouk and was this Ricky the Dragon Steamboat and Earl Hebner, they had came here, and I had the opportunity to talk with Bret. And I was telling him that, me and my lady, we're big fan of the Hart family, Owen and everybody. And he had suggested that if we wanted to get into wrestling, to talk to one of the best people to train is Lance Storm. Is this true?
Oh, 100%. I don't know if Lance still runs his school anymore now, though.
Oh, wow.
Because Lance was one of the only kind of guys, I mean, like him up in Calgary, around in that area at the time, like who has that experience that he did. And he has a lot of his students are out there to this day. But like, I mean, now, like Tyler Breeze was one of his students, and he runs a school in Orlando. And him and Sean Spears.
Wow.
Sorry, yeah, that's Sean Spears. I can't always remember people's actual names or what they use nowadays, but they run a school in Orlando that they run based off of a lot of Lance's system, how he ran his training school and stuff like that. But Lance was awesome, and he had many, many successful students come through his camp and stuff like that. Like, and I think he had just closed down because right before COVID, he had finally accepted the producer position. And then he got let go because he wasn't able to come back across the border or whatever once COVID hit or something like that. But yeah, Lance was awesome. Yeah, he was really awesome.
Have you ever trained Lance?
Yeah, I went up to his school a couple times before I left Calgary. And then even then, like Lance was a booker for PWA Prairie Wrestling Alliance that I used to work for in both Calgary and Edmonton. And so the last year that I was there, right before I got signed, I got to work with Lance quite a bit in that point in time. And so even like it was kind of funny. Occasionally people will say like, "Oh, like I trained with him" or something like that, or people at Remford say it. And he'll always say, no, he trained with me like twice and he was already good. And I was considered that one hell of a compliment coming from Lance Storm and how good he was.
That's dope. To receive that, like report, you just say to yourself like,
this is great.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Like apparently I'm doing something right here.
We gotta give a shout out to our man, friend of the show, been on our show multiple times. We still text Dr. Tom Pritchett, which I heard through Brodie. You still want your rematch when
I
FCW
do. I need that. I'm probably. I'll if I have that match anytime soon, I'll throw my boots in the garbage right afterwards because I won't need to wrestle another match after me and Dr. Tom go at it one last time. I mean, I saw him at just in November, at the end of November. It was the first time in a while when we were at WrestleCade. I think that was what it was called, WrestleCade in North Carolina.
Right? Yeah, we've been.
Yeah, and it was just so funny to see myself and Dirty Dango and Taylor Rotunda standing there with Dr. Tom, and he's like, "Oh, you guys are the old guys now at these things. Cool." And it's like shit. But I mean, Doc was a man. I love him, man. It's
be like Dr. Tom, man.
yeah. I mean, I probably need to challenge him for that match soon. I need a little something to fire me up.
Yeah, I did send him a text to let him know you was coming on. So he.
Yeah, I know we texted at Christmas time. So
yeah, he good dude, man. Between him and our good buddy Rip Rogers.
oh yes.
They just and Rip. You talk about F bombs.
Oh yeah.
That man, I done talked to Rip off air, watching basketball and the F bombs that he gave in a minute.
Yeah, I mean,
But
yeah, those were two of my favorite coaches right there. Like, I mean, those guys.
Yeah.
Like, I'm really lucky in the wrestling industry for the coaches that I've had that have taken the time, and like everyone's had their own really unique flavor and perspective on wrestling. And Rip and Dr. Tom were two of like the perfect kind of like finishers for me, I would say. Like, but it was weird because like Rip would never quite treat me like a student, and he used to really piss off his protege, so to speak, Von Lilas, when we were working each other, because he'd be like, "Man, he fucking shits on me for stuff, and then like he'll talk to you like you guys just worked the match or something. And I'm like, well, sucks to be you, you know. And he'd be like, man, I've known Rip for like 20 years. What the fuck? I'd be like, you're a student. And I was like, when I came in, like me and Rip had already worked a bunch of the same places. We knew a bunch of the same people, even though I'm, 10, 15 years behind Rip kind of thing.
Of course, yeah.
But it was just, there was that familiarity. Where when I first sat down with Rip, it wasn't just sitting down with the coach, even though he was like a coach, and he taught me an immense amount. Like he helped me put things together that I'd been trying to figure out for years, and just the way he did it like nobody else. And like it was kind of a funny transition because even to go from somebody like Rip to Dr. Tom, like they were also old friends,
Right.
and so it was kind of like an easy transition to go to because you knew what kind of guy you were going to get. And even then I didn't, but it made the transition make sense. And knowing what I did from Rip and guys before, it all flowed down the line. And yet when I got to Dr. Tom, like for a while, I was like, man, this guy's crazy. And then I was like, oh no, he's a genius. I get it now. And it didn't take too long to set in. And he was a guy that I saw sit down and spend time with so many students, people that maybe did or didn't make it. It didn't matter, any way, shape, or form. Both Rip and Dr. Tom, they always gave their time to people.
Yeah.
Always.
Yeah, Rip was great. I love Dr. Tom too. We was watching a playoff game a few years ago. I was talking to Rip, and Rip went over. I won't say this on air. A very famous WrestleMania match. He was like, that fucking ending was stupid. I'm like, why? Yeah. He was like, this the fuck why? Look at this fucking blah blah blah. Oh, that's a good point, Rip. And it was like, it's a match that I tell you, it's a match that we all love. But when Rip went through to understand why he did it, but I want to did it this way because of XYZ, blah blah blah. I said, wow, this dude is a genius. And I'm not one of the boys. I collegiate wrestle, but I help put up rings. But I was like, okay, I see what he means. This how he is with stuff. Shout out to Deanna Perrazzo and Impact. I remember when she was coming up, Rip gave us a call and told me, man, I got this girl. She gonna be something. And for it, she was in the performance center, and then I look at her with Impact, doing stuff in Ring of Honor. So Rip and Dr. Tom, man, they trained so many great people. Speaking of training, Regal, one of the greats, just got released by WWE. Did you have any I don't say memories of Regal because Regal isn't dead, but did you have any interactions of Regal in WWE?
I had lots actually. Regal was always pretty cool to me actually from the first time I got to FCW. I think he must have like kind of known who I was because he came to talk to me right away after one of the first matches he was around for in FCW, and he was always very serious. And I did enjoy that about him because like when he'd come to tell you something, he really had a point to what he was coming to tell you about. Mm-hmm. And then eventually, as I started to get to know him and started to see him loosen up a little bit, he was a really good storyteller. And he was a guy like all the British guys have stories like you wouldn't believe. The shit that they would do is just messed up. But even him telling the story of, I think it's Big Show and Khali getting a fight in the locker room one day. And the way Regal tells it, I could never do it justice because I was literally like on the floor, just holding my sides, laughing. Just at his performance of that whole story and like how he just places everybody and the ridiculousness of it. And I could never do it justice, but that was one of the last times I remember him telling like a story in the locker room that just like had everybody laughing because it was just so ridiculous and just the way he told it, so perfect.
Yeah, Regal was. I always loved Regal, man. We had just watched old Nitro '96 Regal against Sting, and Sting did the Stinger splash Sting
Yeah.
misses, and then Regal did like the little, he did
Oh
like a
yeah.
head shake, and the way he did it was just, and he did like the little, he used to let us little muscle with the little point. His mannerisms was like so, like the way he did certain things, like the little head shake, and he used to like
Yeah.
let was so crisp. But you never thought Regal, yeah, as called, fake. He was legit, and
Yeah.
he did well with AB Sting or Flair. I
Yeah.
mean, WWE, Austin, Trish, when we hit him with the Regal cutter, the brass nuts, power to punch.
Oh yeah.
He was just so great. So Regal, definitely one of the greats. We're gonna let you go on a few quick questions here. Do you believe in UFOs?
Oh yeah. Actually, that's hilarious. I was just reading something earlier that ties our history of humanity in with aliens. Literally reading it just before we got on the air today, basically. So yeah, I'm big into all that stuff.
The
Well, I don't know if
Illuminati.
you'd say big, but oh, the Illuminati. I don't know, man.
You had it on your
I don't
Titantron,
know.
man. Y'all had the third eye on your tiger.
So that's a good rib because guess what? We didn't pick that. The funniest thing was I put that
Shit.
on my gear when I joined with Connor because they had already used it, just the Eye of Ra.
Mm.
But then I had found one online, which I later found out was the Illuminati symbol, which has the triangle
Trying
around
right.
the eye. And so I'd put that on my tights when we were in NXT, and then they told me to kind of change it. So we just had the eye, I think, on my shit for a while. And so this was before the t-shirts came out. Um, we were told to find a new logo. And
Oh
Connor
shit.
found probably 100 other logos to use for them. Like we came up with so many logos and things for them that they told us to stop.
Oh
We
wow.
didn't know that there was a shirt coming out. That NXT, that first paper, it was not the first one. It was one of the first ones. That first NXT pay per view. All of a sudden, I think we were sitting there, and I saw it on Twitter that it like they had tweeted like Ascension shirts released today. I saw that design, and I was like, "What the fuck?" I literally went, "That's the design they told me not to do. They told me to take it off my gear." I was just, no. I mean, Illuminati, I'm sure somebody rules this world, but I don't know if it's the Illuminati. Too many of us know about them now. They probably changed their names again.
Something else. Inspirations on the face paint.
Oh man, it was a lot of like dark metal bands actually, or black metal bands, um, and that kind of stuff. And oddly enough, this was one of those surreal moments of it was one of the bands. I don't know. You guys probably might not be into black metal, like Norwegian black metal type stuff, but they'd always done corpse paint and stuff. So when I was originally switching to face paint, I was looking at a lot of stuff like that. And there was a band called Emperor, who one of their founders, his name is Abbott, and I loved his paint a lot. Well, eventually he split from Emperor. We were in San Juan, Puerto Rico, and I saw a bunch of dudes in the airport as we were checking in that morning. That was from a different band that me and Rowan had actually been trying to see forever, and we both wound up running into them in the airport. So we wound up striking up a conversation. They invite us to the show that night. We walk into the back of the show in San Juan, Puerto Rico. They open a garage door, and there stands Abbott in full face paint. The guy that I had been listening to forever, tried to half copy his face paint and kind of change some stuff from. He was just standing right there, and I was like, "This is fucking unreal." Like, because he is a big man, so he looks like he should be in wrestling more or less.
Right.
But so he was a big influence, and then too, like even Jeff Hardy, because like when I started to want to change my paint, I knew Jeff had been so creative with all the
Right.
stuff that he did that I didn't want to do something like him. And Gold Dust, like Dustin as well, helped me a lot with stuff because I was like, I want to stay away. Like you two guys, I was like, between you and Jeff, you guys are fucking legends with your face paint. So I don't want to do anything like you guys. And that was why I'd kind of moved towards more like black metal, the corpse paint type style of what I did. And it just kind of kept evolving from there while I was doing it.
It was great. When it comes to face paint, we're wrestling. And I'm going to segue this to one of our late great dear friends. Who are some of the people you think about when it comes to face paint? You mentioned Dustin, Goldust, Amazing Jeff. Besides that, face paint and wrestling, who's some of the first people you think about?
I mean, the Road Warriors,
Yeah.
like Demolition, Warrior. Like when I was a kid, I used to paint my face like the Ultimate Warrior, like Demolition. Not
Yeah.
so much Smash. This was really complicated for me back then, but I used to do Axe all the time when I was a kid.
X was
And I would
easy.
and I would do Hawks paint all the time. I remember trying to do animals when I was a kid, but I could never get the spider right.
Right,
Like,
right.
and then it was funny, like, I don't know if it's true, but Brawler told me that Hawk would do both of their face paint.
Wow.
So, but I don't know, because even I met Animal when he was in the face paint. So, I mean, obviously Hawk was gone by then, but
Yeah,
it was, I think it was Brawler, I think, that told me that when we first started up on the road. So,
man.
but yeah, those guys.
I was
And
a
Muda.
kid. Yeah, I was a kid. I was dressed up as I tried to do the Animal Spider, and then we were good friends with Animal. God rest his soul.
Yeah.
My good close friend Chris Featherstone, who does Pancakes and Power Slams, another great wrestling podcast. He was doing the show with Animal, and Animal did his show. They did the Monday Night Raw review every Monday, and Animal did Chris's show like a few hours before he passed because I got the text.
Oh wow.
And I met Animal a few times, and we text. Great guy. I tried to do the spider like you, I messed up, and I got an art degree. One of my degrees is in art. Years later in college, I dressed up as Sting one year, which was cool. Sting always changes up, and then I was Great Muda.
Yeah.
Because Muda's paint always.
I was able to do his.
Yeah, I could do Muda. I could do like Muda, but like I tried Great Kabuki. Remember him? They didn't work.
Oh yes.
I tried. It didn't like Demolition. I tried the Smash.
Yeah.
And I couldn't do it.
I just met them last year, and I wanted to ask him, but I never got to it because I was just like, man, your paint was like, that was some serious shit. Like the way he did like the flames and stuff like that. Like, yeah, it was cool.
Because Bill Eadie was the solid silver, black,
just a quick little design.
Quick design, and before the internet, how we grew up, it's like I always say, wait, Smash was like the Russian, like Krusty Krusty. Like, wait, that's the same dude, Repo Man.
Yep.
So
Barry'd really been through there, man. He's something else. Those guys are awesome workers. I still love watching their matches.
They still big, and Bill voice. He got one of them narrator voice. He could say anything. Like he just say, going down the street, going across to get a sub. Like you just listen,
Yeah.
Listen to it. A couple more questions before we leave out. Thank you for your time, much, Victor, for this. Give us one food and one drink that you could have every day.
So club soda is one of them. For some reason, I used to just think it was disgusting, and then there's something about it lately. I don't know. It's just weird. I drink club soda like nonstop. That or coffee. I gotta have coffee and club soda every day. And then food. It's a hard one. I could eat pizza every day for sure, but that's not good for me.
All right. So
but
I
I'm with you on that one.
What kind of pizza?
I'm just a meat pizza.
Meat
just throw
lovers?
meat on it. Yeah. Yeah.
So
always.
I'm gonna be a troll right now because me and Axel graded this. Explain to the fans that may not know, why do they call it Canadian bacon and ham?
Oh, it's just
That's
I used to ask the same question when I was a kid. I was like, "What makes this Canadian?" It's just ham. I mean, I think it's just the way that
it's sliced.
It's just the way it's cut. That's really all it is. It's just like that thick sliced ham, like instead. So that was one I never quite figured out either. I don't eat it actually that often.
So by you being the pizza guy, do you agree that pineapples go on pizza?
Get out.
No, no, thank you. I appreciate you. Thank you. Because
He said no.
It doesn't. Yes,
No.
he said no. Thank you, sir.
I like pineapple. I like pineapple.
He said, "Get out."
It's
Yes,
disgusting
get out.
when it's cooked. It's disgusting when it's cooked.
Man.
Just ruins it. Completely ruins the pineapple. You
This
don't put
guy's
it on.
coming to the
You don't put
cookout.
it on a pizza.
Come
You know the
on,
weird
look.
thing is, I love Hawaiian pizza if you take all the pineapple off it. Then it tastes
Stop
fine.
lying.
Like
That's
that
much better.
mixes it. Yeah.
It reminds me of a ham pizza.
No, that cooked pineapple is disgusting. It ruins it.
It is.
It's just awful. Yeah.
The person that made this shit got shot in that big toe, point blank.
Yeah.
I'll tell you this. One of my close brothers, Antonio Slump, he gets in a feud. Slump gets highly upset. Pineapples don't deserve on pizza. Don't me. I'll tell you this.
It just doesn't mix to me. That's all.
It's just not.
I will eat pineapples on pizza only if it's jalapenos and ham.
Oh, that's what I've never done.
Try that.
Occasionally, I'll do it if it's like cold. If it's cold, then I can kind of like I'll take off some of them.
Right.
I'll leave on a few, and then I'm like, it's not so bad, but I still don't like it. Still don't like it. It's like it's not right.
So I agree with you on that. The way when I order pizza, like you meat lovers, I gotta have pepperoni or like sausage. Some kind of spice, like banana peppers, jalapenos, I like spice. I don't know if you do.
Yeah.
Kind of thing. Pineapples not so much. If do you have any funny road stories when it comes to food? Because I know you traveled with Connor, with Fandango, formerly Tyler Breeze.
Man, I mean, I know some of those guys. I actually know that Connor and Rowan have some funny food stories because they would just. Rowan's a weird guy, and I feel like Connor would always tell me like weird eating stuff. But I mean, most of the time, for us, like whenever I would travel, I mean, I'm real simple. Like me and Brodie would get really excited, like if we just had Waffle House all weekend. Sometimes, like we were just like, oh, breakfast, and like we'd be driving and like looking for somewhere to eat, and we were like, wait, we had Waffle House earlier. Well, it's all that's open now too. It's like Waffle House or McDonald's. What do you want to do? Waffle House.
Waffle House, right?
And like with Brodie, like he would usually get recognized everywhere. Like somebody would always recognize him, and it didn't matter what And so it always happened. And that would be kind of the thing. Like there was another story. It doesn't really have so much to do with food, but there was one night we were sitting at like our hotel restaurant or whatever. We were just sitting there. I think we had just sat down, and then Gotch walked in, like maybe 5 minutes afterwards, type of thing, and he went and sat down at a different table, and like there was only like the three of us in the whole restaurant. So we're like, hey Gotch, you want to come hang out, type of thing? And he's like, oh yeah, sure. I always had a funny relationship with Gotch because half the time I'd just tell him to shut up. He just goes on forever with his stories, but like it was fine. Like we just thought it was hilarious because we were like, we don't dislike it. Like we've never not gotten along. We've all worked together a million times. Like I'm not gonna sit in a restaurant and not hang out with you. Like that's just fucking weird. Come on. That's about it. Like I never had too many weird food stories. I never had too many of the guys that were like super picky, or just get like who would just like eat anything. So yeah, nothing too wild there.
Got 2 more questions for you before we let you go. The Fashion Files. We talked about how movies. Fans sent this to me earlier today. The Saw Party, which was hilarious. You and Connor trapped with Brizongo. They knew Connor's name, but they forgot you.
Oh yeah, always. They would always forget my name.
You want us to tell us one story about that segment, and do you have any specific favorite Fashion Files with them guys.
That one was really funny because technically we died at the end of it, and was never really mentioned. And we all sat in that shower in those positions pretty much all afternoon. That was one that took like a long time to film for some reason, and we like none of us moved. Like everybody just sat there like chained up the way we were, and like even while like we were just waiting to film, like everybody was just like sitting there like we were in Saw. Like it was no different, more or less. Like it was kind of one of those things where nobody like wanted to break out of
character.
Just the hilarity of it, because it just seems so unreal that we were doing that. But I mean, all the Fashion Files stuff was awesome. Like we even did this one commercial. We did a commercial or two for StubHub at the time as well. That was just like awesome. Like when I go back and watch that stuff, I'm like, man, we knocked this out of the ballpark like every time. Like the writers were so good for all of that stuff. Like we were all excited to go to it every week. It was just it was one of those things where we were like, yeah, this is something they didn't think was going to work, and it just kept working. Except that like Vince didn't get it, I guess. So that's why it faded away, because like everybody else would be sitting there laughing, and Vince didn't get it, so he wasn't laughing, and that went the way it did, which was still silly because at the same time, like the day we did the Stranger Things one, and I was dressed like Barb from Stranger Things. I've got this silly outfit on, I got my face paint on, and I was talking to one of the guys that would always do the filming, and I was like, hey, do we get a wig? I was like, I need a wig for this, right? And Vince was walking by with his crew right then. He just looks at me and he's like, of course you need a goddamn wig. Ah! And he shakes my hand, laughs, like walks away.
What the fuck?
Yeah, so like I just like look at the guy and I'm like, oh yeah, we got a wig, right? He's like, yeah, we got a wig.
It's funny. Yeah. Vince doing that reminds us of what Steve did earlier. Just gotta get
like it was, if you'd catch him walking through the hallways sometimes, like he would always just kind of like pop up at weird times and he'd do weird wacky shit. So like he just felt like that. Yeah.
Shout out to music fan. We love all music. Mint Condition, the lead singer Stokely talked about being friends with Prince and said how Prince would just materialize. It would just show up at the most random.
One of those guys, yeah.
He said they was performing one time. He was at some like club, and somebody was throwing like paper. He's like, "Who the hell was throwing paper?" And it was Prince. He was like, "Dude, where the hell did you come from?"
Wow.
Because Prince was throwing stuff up. So it sounded like the same thing with Vince. Besides that, any other Vince stories besides that? Well, of course you need to wear out.
Yeah. So one of my last weird interactions was one day. This was in Atlanta, and I'm walking down the hallway backstage. This was kind of when Taker was doing like his, I don't know, farewell stuff, or they were filming a bunch of stuff.
That's right.
And I'm kind of walking down the hallway, and I see him and Hunter like kind of arguing a little bit, or like something, middle of the hallway, and I'm like, oh, I gotta get by them, but they're in the middle of something, and I'm kind of like trying to like sidestep, like walk up so that I can kind of get by him, but like Taker was always super cool to me. I had a lot of good interactions with him, and like Hunter was always cool to me as well. And so I'm kind of just trying to like get by them, and all of a sudden Taker just looks at me and he goes, "Hey kid," he goes, "Go in there for me." And I go, "What? Go in where?" He's like, "Go in there." And he like points to the door, and I look at it, and it's Vince's office. But so like I'm looking at the sign on the door, it says Vince's office, and then I notice that there's a crack in the door. Like the door's open a crack. There's just an eyeball, staring at me like through the door, like through the crack. I actually went, okay, you know what I mean? And then I saw the eyeball as I was about to open the door. I'm like, whoa, what the? And then Vince just comes flying out, and he's just like, fine, if you won't come in, then I'm gonna come out. Like, I don't care.
What the
No
hell?
idea what they were doing. I don't know if like Hunter and Vince were trying to like rib Taker to do something or what it was, but I was just like, I don't know. Okay. So, but I was like, okay,
Like,
Taker tells me to do
why y'all
something, I'm
put me in
going
the
to
middle
do
of
it.
this
But,
shit?
you know, it was one of those moments where you turn, you see what it is, and then I saw just the eye of Vince from behind the door.
The fuck?
Just like, man, all right. I don't know what these guys are up to.
Shout out to my
Wacky shit.
sisters. What is going on? Like, this is the
Yeah.
best eyeball. Come on. Get it.
Yeah.
Get it out. Open it.
I was so pissed, but I don't know. Just weird stuff like that.
You
I
just
feel
think
like a
to
lot of my
yourself,
interactions.
why the fuck is this happening to me? What's going on? Am I being punked right now? What?
So you look at Victor's story. He loves maple syrup. He loves Pinhead. He loves dark metal. He loves club soda.
Yeah.
Stu Hart randomly to start, to start grabbing people from them submissions. He loved his grip. Vince. He interacted with Vince's album.
Well.
Oh man, I've never. I know we talked
like,
the headbangers Thrasher with Glenn. And it said they used to always like fuck up Vince's office all the time, like rearrange it. Man, this Vince's elbow. They probably was a red man.
I can imagine, man. Like that's probably why they had security always standing outside of it afterwards. Because yeah, my whole time there was almost always somebody guarding that office, whether he was in there or not. So.
Did you I know you said Trips was cool. We enacted with Trips. We was in Boston a few years ago at the concussion, Christopher Nowinski, the Boston concussion dinner again we was at, and Trips was cool. Bob Costas was there, Mike Adamley.
Yeah. Well, they would always bring him in all the time. Every year they would do like a seminar both within the performance center and on the road with Nowinski, just about concussion stuff.
Right. Was Doctor what was his name? The doctor that worked with Chris. I forgot his name.
Was it Black? Was it Dr.
Yeah, Dr.
Black?
Black. Dr. Black was there too as well. Any interactions with Stephanie or with Shane? Any stories with them? Linda?
Not so much with Linda. I would only ever see Linda. I felt like she would be. I'd always catch her coming out of the office when we were in DC. Like I'd always feel like I'd just be walking by the office, and all of a sudden she would walk out, and I'd just be like, "Oh, hi, Mrs. McMahon. It's nice to see you." And she'd be like, "I don't know who you are," but she'd say hello anyway. Like kind of go on type of thing. But Stephanie was always awesome. From the very first time I met her in NXT until the last time I saw her, she was always super sweet. She's funny. We just like funny little things. She just always had funny comments you wouldn't expect her to make, kind of thing. And Shane, I didn't know how to take. He was always really nice. I don't know how to put it. It was just strange. Like, felt like he was in definitely a different world than I guess what the rest of us were probably. Babe, can you turn that back on? Sorry, just turn the light on. Thanks.
Shout out. Thank you.
Yeah, couldn't see me.
Mrs. Victor.
Yeah.
He was always like in another place.
Kind of, yeah. Like it just seemed like his mind was in such a different landscape than I guess what the rest of us were in.
Right.
Like sometimes he would come to like tell us stuff, and we were like, I don't know if you know what we're doing, type of thing. But then like I'd talk to him different times, and he was always like totally fine. But it was just sometimes he would make odd comments about stuff, and I didn't know how to take them because they just seemed like I didn't know if he didn't know us, more or less, type of thing. So it was just stuff like that. But I mean, like he came back and still hella performed, and he was always super upbeat. Like that's the one thing I don't want to say. Like he would say something to us like wacky or whatever. He was always super upbeat. He was always very positive. I don't have any specific weird interactions with him type of thing. Unfortunately,
you ain't run into his eye. You want to take inside?
No, I never got that. Like, that would be the one thing. I think one time I was in the trainer's office or something, and I used to walk around. I just vaped backstage. I didn't give a shit where I was. Um, and I can remember one time I just let like a big exhale out of my vape. And I think he just walked in the door right as I did it. So he just walked into a cloud of it. And he was kind of like, type of thing. He just went, yeah, it's not really my jam. And I was like, sorry. I didn't really know what else to say. It's just like, all right, I should probably just go hide in the locker room again or something.
So with now I appreciate your time. They've been one of the best guests we've had in a decade. What is next for you being a part of the Awakenings, part of the Ascension with Connor, the Awakening with Connor, because of the plug party? What do you have coming up for as appearances and the charities and the organizations that you do? What's next for you?
Right now, it's up in the air. Like everything with us since COVID hit has been so back and forth. Just with the way it keeps going. Like sometimes we'll just get busy and have a bunch of stuff, and then we'll go a month or two and not have anything. And so that was a thing. I thought there was something coming up this month, and then I haven't heard from the promoter that we'd been working for, so I don't know what's going on there. I know Connor has a couple things coming up at the end of the month. He does some stuff with Rhino, so I can't quite tell you what it is because I don't remember off the top of my head. But then I think we're supposed to have something in February for Outlaw Pro Wrestling up in New York, like up in Queens area in New York. And then I do my own podcast as well called Wrestling with the Struggle.
Oh yeah, we're gonna talk about that. Yeah.
Yeah. So
let's talk about that, man. You I know you're on a radio show. We see radio more like because
I
got trained in radio before podcasting started off, which is no problem. How'd you get the name?
I was trying to figure out why the fuck I'd want to do a podcast because I'm not really known for talking or talking to anybody. And just since COVID hit, I've gone through kind of like my own personal growth. I want to say my own mental struggle. Like I'd already been struggling for a while. Like wrestling's really not easy, and like I've just been kind of trying to find different outlets for myself to do as well. Like I'm not one of those guys that wants to be on camera all the time or like making videos or talking shit and stuff like that, and just all the kind of stuff that I've been kind of exploring myself and helping myself get over everything. You know what I mean? In the last couple of years, I was a really angry dude, and I wasn't just angry for myself. Like in my journey in wrestling, especially within developmental and just wrestling in general, like you kind of just see a bunch of shit, and I was having a hard time dealing with it all, and I wasn't able to deal with it all quite right. And so with the way things were, like I eventually kicked out. I just found like the path that I'm on, that just kind of managed to transfer the way I was feeling about things, about the way I'd been left in my career, or the way I'd been left feeling in my career after all this point. And I've been trying to think of something to do, I guess, kind of just like to, I don't know, let people know type of thing. And then I started thinking like, well, I really like listening to podcasts. I spend a lot of time listening to podcasts, but would I be the one to host a podcast? Like, and I'd keep telling myself, like, no, that's going to suck. Don't do that. Nobody wants to listen to you, type of thing. But the idea kept bothering me. And I had to figure out what I was going to do other than just talk to wrestlers. You know what I mean? Because, like, you guys do such a good job of that already, talking to wrestlers and getting their stories. So to me, I thought, well, I know all these people that, like, I really kind of know their stories, like, of more than what's been seen on TV. You know what I mean? Like, not everybody gets the 24/7 documentary or whatever else. And I used to sit there and talk with a lot of guys in developmental when they were going through shit. Because, like, that system that we were in was something else that hasn't really been documented. the way it probably will be coming up in the future. And I just thought, like, man, I know a lot of people that I saw go through some shit who, half the time wrestlers want to kill themselves every day, especially when you get into that system, at least, and that's figuratively speaking. Because when you get into developmental and you're somebody that's loved wrestling and worked for wrestling, all you've done is try to like get there, and then you get there and it's like, well, that was only half the battle. And for some people, it takes a year, 2 years, some people 10 years.
Right.
And so everybody kind of has their own story that like nobody else really knows. I think behind the scenes, and especially from people who like maybe didn't make it to the top in WWE, but I think they could have been or should have been. So like I just like to, and now they wind up somewhere else, and they're more free and kind of doing, what's more natural to them. And everybody kind of goes through those struggles of just feeling fucked up, like, oh, my dream's a nightmare right now. How do you overcome that? How do you get past all this shit?
Right.
So that's how I came up with Wrestling with the Struggle, was just like, man, wrestling is a struggle. A lot of people don't see what we go through. They don't know that it's a lot like everybody else's job, but it's at such a, held at such a higher level, things that you deal with, especially when you're doing your dream job and it's not fun.
Right.
That's quite the struggle to overcome, like mentally, because a lot of the people in wrestling are pretty positive people. They're all there because they love it. And so, like, when something doesn't work out or you're put into a certain mind frame, it's hard to get out of, it's hard to overcome. And so that's really what I'm trying to tell the story of with my podcast, and the people I'm, talking to. They're all people who are like, I know their stories of. And like, even I was so busy over the holiday, I didn't manage to get another one out. And even now that my house is empty again, I'm like, which is the next person, or which is the next step I'm going to take? Because for me, I don't just sit there and go like, who do I want to get on for ratings? Like I want a real point. So when I'm talking to somebody and to get, a part of their story out that I feel like can help people, relate to us as not just wrestlers or not just a superstar. You know what I mean? Like, we're real people that go through a lot of real shit, and it's in wrestling, that's from the bottom up and all the way back down. And that's just what I want to get to, and it transfers over in the entertainment industry in general. Like, there's a few guys I've known in the music industry, and with that, we're trying to transition into movies and stuff like that. And that, it's all a very similar world. Like, it's not as closed off as like we might all think it is, as being separate little entities themselves. They all kind of operate the same way. Everybody deals with the same shit one way or another. And, I just want to focus on how we get through our everyday lives, no matter what it is, how we get through it.
I like that, and you have a good voice too, which is important. You got a good distinctive voice, and the fact that you have the ideas of that Wrestling with the Struggle. I think you had 3 episodes so far.
Just 4. So I got 4 out just before Christmas, and I'll hopefully have the 5th out here soon. I've been sitting here debating probably too much. I've been thinking too much about it. Like, it's been funny because the first bit of the podcast has all just kind of come to me as a feeling. And like right now I have like a bunch of random different feelings. Like, I thought about, do I want to do something about Brodie? Because, when Christmas hit, like, that hit me really hard again, even a year after. And then too, I think like, I don't want to just sit here and talk about depressing stuff or, whatever else. But like, what do I want to move forward next with? How do you move it on to the next level and just keep the message going out? Even I was happy because like one of my last episodes, I had somebody actually reach out to me with like a real life problem, and I'm like, well, I'm not a therapist, but like, I'm sure we can all identify with this kind of thing. And that's all I really want to get across to everybody is like, we all deal with shit, and like, we're all human. It doesn't really matter what you do. We all kind of think the same way. We all get trapped the same way. How do we do to just, make it okay? Because it is all okay. Hopefully.
That's true. And I appreciate what you're doing, man. I do with wrestling with the struggle. I appreciate that because, like my show, being under the mat, being under, because we cover pro wrestling, MMA guys, comedians of like what's under, like what actually happens, the struggle. Of course, everybody wants to talk about the the summit and the peaks, but you got valleys, and you got to have some kind of struggle with success. So, what you got going on is great. I know you had one of the guys from, was it Impact, was on your show, Macklin.
Steve Macklin. Yeah, he was my second guest or my third guest. Okay.
Third guest. Yeah, your third guest. Good guy. Good guy. So we following you. Just keep it up, man. Let everybody know before we end this recording. Gonna ask you, still for a second after we hit in, how to reach you, social media, email, Twitter, Instagram, Facebook. Don't use MySpace anymore. So.
Yeah, I don't use Facebook, but I'm at Vic the Space Lord on both Twitter and Instagram. It is underscores. It's like Vic underscore the underscore Space Lord, but I'm the one with the blue check mark, screaming face. You can get at me there. You can email me your shit, your requests, your struggles of the day, that kind of thing. On all of those platforms, and you can get at me for booking inquiries and all the wrestling with the struggle stuff at etwrestling34@gmail.com. And yeah, that's pretty much all it. That's how you get a hold of me. I'm on my stuff. It is funny because like I said, over the holidays I got a few email requests that I just didn't get back to because I was so busy with things. So we'll see if I get back to them now.
Appreciate it, man. Everybody, we had Victor, formerly from the Ascension in WWE, now part of the Awakening with Connor, who will get down the line. First guest of Under the Mat Radio. The man loves Tito's. He dealt with Vince McMahon's eye up front. This man loves Kevin Conroy.
Good Lord.
Syrup. He's going to experience maple syrup over here from
I can't wait.
The lover of club soda.
That.
He hates pineapples on pizza.
Yep.
Yes.
The man Victor himself. We appreciate you, brother, for being on Under the Mat Radio. For myself, Tech, for XO, for the absent Toe, for the absent Afrocentric Queen, and DR. Thank you, Victor, for being on the show.